Disclaimer: this video contains spoilers for these Transformers titles. There are time codes in the description if you want to jump around. Are we all following the instructions? Incredible. Now, maximize.
Before time began, there was the Cube.
I still remember seeing this movie in theaters back in 2007. I had no real knowledge of Transformers before this. I think I maybe saw bits of an episode of Transformers Cybertron on TV one time, maybe glimpses of other stuff, but this was the moment the doors were blown wide open. As a kid, you can flip-flop between liking a great many things, and I certainly jumped from movie to movie. At one point I liked Ice Age 2, the next moment I liked Cars, another moment I liked Robots starring Ewan McGregor. But when I first saw Transformers, it had a chokehold on me that was absolutely unmatched. These robots slamming into each other, the awe that the movie was able to elicit from their scale and sheer force, it opened up a whole universe of possibilities in my brain. Not only of the different ways these robots could pull each other apart, but of the stories you could tell about the war between the Autobots and Decepticons. The epic clashes of Optimus Prime and Megatron. Whether it be in the movie, or playing the tie-in video game, following it up with animated and of course the sequels that would arrive in the coming years, even if it only manifested in Stratego Transformers games, I was there. Transformers almost instantly became my new obsession, only it was one that would never quite go away. Everything else I enjoy often comes in waves. Sometimes I won't really care about this or that, and then for a couple months I'll really dive in. But with Transformers, that right there is a constant. There's nothing cooler than the vast possibilities of robots in disguise. But it's also the most fun to talk about with other people. You get into a room with a bunch of people who know just as much as you, and you're all talking about how awesome Optimus Prime is? I mean, come on, dude, that's the good stuff right there. I am certainly not alone in my love of Transformers. This franchise has one hell of a fan base. A group of people who love these robots like nothing else, no matter how popular or even obscure some of those characters can be. And so I decided to reach out. I wanted to speak to some of the biggest voices in the Transformers community to ask them some questions about the franchise, to get their viewpoints on where we've been. It all started with the simple question I just asked myself: what was your introduction to Transformers?
I can tell you certain firsts. I know that my first toy was either Starscream, who I got for Christmas, or Snarl, who I got for my birthday. Either way, that puts that in 86 at the latest, probably. And I know that the first issue of the comic that I got, which was the first comic I ever read, was issue number 97 of the Marvel UK series, which was released in January 1987.
Actually, growing up, I have two older brothers. They were really into Lego and Bionicle. And so Transformers wasn't super in our household, but it really wasn't until I was a little bit older and I was using the internet and I started watching Beast Wars. Beast Wars was my generation one.
So it was actually Armada. I remember my great-grandma, she actually got me the Hot Shot toy from Armada, and that was like my first introduction. And then afterwards, with all that absorption of Armada, then came all the G1 reruns. I can't remember what program it is, some program in the UK where they do reruns of all the G1 episodes in that. And I remember just watching them so much.
And when I was little, I wasn't that into Transformers, but I got a Transformers Cybertron Optimus Prime figure for Christmas or something. I didn't even know what a Transformer was, but then I found out the name. It was Optimus Prime, and I was like, this is so cool. What a cool name. And I was like, oh, I could turn into a truck too? What the heck?
I saw the first movie I didn't see it in the theater. I think I saw it on DVD, and then I watched animated, and I was like, oh, okay. I had the Darth Vader Death Star Transformer, and that shit was sick.
When I was a kid, I think I became interested in Transformers when I kept seeing Revenge of the Fallen advertised on Nickelodeon, and I was like, these things turn into cars? That's incredible. And so I remember before I knew anything about Transformers, I didn't know a single character. I went to Toys R Us, I wanted to buy Transformers, and the very first two I got, just looking at the coolest looking cars in the box, were Barricade, Bumblebee. This is the one that had the two Gatling guns pop out of the hood.
My introduction to Transformers was in 2010, I believe. That's the year it was, because I remember the exact figure I got. It was actually my brother. He wanted a robot for Christmas, and he ended up getting the big Battle Ops Bumblebee, the leader class one that's really big, and electronics and stuff. And I remember just being absolutely infatuated by that when I was very young.
But then after that, I watched Transformers Animated, and that massively hooked me. Something that continues to be of interest to me until this day.
And ever since then, I found the movies, because at the time, Revenge of the Fallen and '07 had been out, and I just loved the movies. So the movies are really the main way I got into it, because that's what was coming out at the time. I just loved those movies and those toys and everything. I just wanted to get so many of them.
Among this pool, we've got introductions across the 2000s, from the Unicron trilogy with Armada and Cybertron, all the way to the biggest influx of new fans after G1, the live-action movies. On top of some odds and ends of people catching up from pre-existing shows, looking back on the history of the franchise from when they first jumped on board. And then, of course, you have Chris McFeely, whose experience dates back very nearly to where this whole journey began in the mid-1980s.
Guys who are like 5 years or less older than me, even 3 years older than me, guys who were 5, 6, 7 when G1 started versus me, who was 2. They were there to like fully soak it up properly from day one, issue 1 of the comic. So I'm just a tiny number of years out from being there right at the very start. But as you say, I'm still lucky enough to have some. For Starscream, in the case of Starscream, one of the very first toys to still be one of my first toys. So I have close to that experience.
But this is just where their journeys began, as they've continued in the years since, ebbing and flowing as the franchise has done the same. And we all find ourselves here. Back when the original cartoon was airing, they had commercial bumpers during the act breaks, telling you that the Transformers will return after these messages. And now that it's been 3 years since I last covered Transformers, since I chronicled the franchise from its inception to the near present day, I can safely say the messages have concluded. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to announce that we now return to the If you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. Alright, these bots aren't going to transform themselves, so let's keep this moving. The year is 2022, and it has been a minute since Transformers hit the big screen. After 5 movies across 10 years, Michael Bay decided to hang up his Transformers jersey with The Last Knight, the most critically panned entry in the series, which is kind of saying something. But hope wasn't too far behind, as Travis Knight came through just 18 months later with Bumblebee, a movie that, while not perfect, sparked an enormous sense of optimism in the fanbase and got them looking forward to the future once again. Not to mention all of the smaller details that made it incompatible with the Bay movies in terms of canon. Details like Bumblebee not being on Earth during World War II, or the Autobots arriving on Earth 20 years too early. As a result, many people began treating this like a reboot of the series and a fresh start to carry us into the future. But while it was considered a success, it did turn out to be the lowest grossing movie of the franchise so far, likely following up from The Last Knight's critical failure. So prospects for what came next took a while to materialize. At first, there were plenty of conversations around a sequel to Bumblebee, but after a while, things started to move in a completely different direction, as the powers that be began to consider the possibility of adapting Beast Wars. The show that brought Transformers back from the brink in the mid-90s, which decided to not focus on the traditional Autobots and Decepticons, and instead turn its sights to the Maximals and Predacons. Characters that didn't turn into vehicles, but instead animals. You had Optimus Primal, the silverback gorilla, and Megatron, the giant purple T-Rex. And perhaps this was the exact change of pace the movies needed. It was what changed the franchise in the 90s. Perhaps it's what we need now to get back to the top of the food chain. Eventually, these two distinct projects wound up being combined. A Bumblebee sequel crossed with a Beast Wars movie to hit theaters in the not-too-distant future, which was all finally revealed in June of 2021 with the announcement of Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. To be directed by Stephen Caple Jr., whose previous credits included Creed 2, and starring Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback as the human leads, alongside Peter Cullen returning as Optimus Prime, and Ron Perlman starring as Optimus Primal, reprising his role after taking it on in Machinima's Prime Wars trilogy. And boy, did this get the fanbase excited again. Finally another Transformers movie. Filming even began right away, shooting in Los Angeles, Montreal, Brooklyn, and Cusco, Peru, among other places. It was all looking up until the movie got delayed an entire year. Yeah, it was slated for June 24th, 2022, but it got pushed back to June 9th, 2023, which kind of took the wind out of everyone's sails. I mean, we were so close. We were getting production updates, set photos, even these images of the vehicles for the Autobots and the enemy faction in this movie, the Terrorcons. But with the delay, not only did we have to wait a whole hell of a lot longer to see the movie for ourselves, updates almost completely stopped. Silence fell upon Rise of the Beasts heading into 2022. We really had nothing to go on for an entire year as the movie was being worked on quietly behind the scenes. However, even with the silence of production, the fanbase decided they wanted to keep up some of the anticipation leading up to release. In fact, there was one dedicated fan with enough time on his hands who decided to create the Twitter account, "Is the Transformers Rise of the Beasts trailer out yet?" You might know him now as TF Hype Guy, but at the start he was counting down to the release of this one single movie. With the frighteningly accurate bio, no one is more excited for this movie than me.
And it was getting close to the original release date, and I was like, this movie's coming out next year, and I feel like no one knows about it. I feel like I want to talk about it because I'm so excited for another Transformers movie. The inspiration really came from, there was this one Kenobi trailer account. It was just them counting down the days to the Kenobi trailer. So I decided to just apply that to Transformers just randomly on a random day in May, and it just went along and it got really big, and I'm so happy I did it, and I was really excited for that trailer. I was really excited for that movie, and I was just really excited to get back in the cinema and see the movies.
But of course, silence could not last forever. As 2022 began to draw to a close, we finally got some updates regarding Rise of the Beasts. In October, it was confirmed that Pete Davidson and Michelle Yeoh had joined the voice cast as Mirage and Air Razor respectively. Leaked images started getting through, with the fanbase's first look at the Maximal characters in the form of this mug revealing Optimus Primal, Cheetor, Rhinox, and Air Razor all in their beast forms. Various details began to emerge, especially plot details from test screenings as the movie was being worked on behind the scenes. But eventually it was all finally capped off with the true beginning of the promotional cycle. After months and months of waiting, after a year-long delay kept fans twiddling their thumbs, the tide turned on December 1st, 2022, where finally Paramount released the first trailer for Transformers Rise of the Beasts.
Stand down! I'm not the one to fear, Prime. There is a darkness coming.
This trailer was properly huge. I mean, we're introducing a bunch of new characters, we got the main human cast, complete with flashes of our Autobot heroes, our Terrorcon villains, and even brief shots of the Maximals. There were some drawbacks to the trailer, of course. The visual effects looked a little unfinished, but it was significantly bigger than I think anyone expected, and something very exciting for the future. It even featured this line.
You've never faced anything like this. Let them come.
And wait a second, is that Bumblebee dying? First off, why would they kill Bumblebee in a Transformers movie? He's like the money of the brand. And second off, if that's what they're doing, why are they showing it in the trailer? In a mostly exciting trailer, that one aspect is the thing that drums up the most question marks, for me at least. But the fandom at large were in an excitement frenzy at this point. It looked big, it looked fun, it looked cool.
The standout moment for that trailer for me was definitely Cheetor and Bumblebee just going along. I was like, wow, that is just the money shot right there for me. That was like one of my favorite shots of the whole trailer, for sure.
I thought it looked pretty okay. I was excited just because it was a Bumblebee sequel, and I really like Bumblebee.
Generally speaking, yeah, I had a positive approach to Rise of the Beasts, yeah. I mean, they put Beast Wars in it, and I'm a bit of a sucker for it either way, Bumblebee had left a good impression, and I think we were all hoping that the Rise of the Beasts could build on that. I approached Rise of the Beasts positively.
And according to Paramount, which I'm sure is a completely reliable source, the trailer managed to rake in a ton of views worldwide, becoming the fourth biggest trailer launch of all time, garnering 238 million views in its first 24 hours, only trailing behind two of the Avengers Endgame trailers and the first Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. If those were anything to go by, we were in for a real big return to form for Transformers. Not to say everything around this trailer was wholly positive, as some were a little more turned off than others.
As a fan, unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, I was upset at the time. I felt as if it was a step back I thought, hey, we had Bumblebee. We were kind of starting over this live action universe. When I heard we were getting all these different casts, all these different Transformers characters in, and I felt at the time that we were taking a step back away from Bumblebee. So that's how I felt. Anytime there was marketing for it, unfortunately, I kind of looked away, and I played the disgruntled fan card at the time.
At the very least, there was a slightly alternate version of the trailer for people to seek out, though it wasn't necessarily intentional. While most caught the official trailer release, by some miracle there was an alternate version with half the sound completely missing. It's unfortunately not nearly as funny as that one Mummy trailer that didn't have sound in it, but it has its moments. But while a movie was finally on the horizon once again, it wasn't the only thing Transformers was offering. Of course, the toys were still hitting shelves. After the previous toy line, the War for Cybertron trilogy, came to a close, the next venture came in the form of Transformers Legacy, which promised to not only introduce new molds, but also bring back old favorites in new ways. Kind of a toy line multiversal combination of various Transformers characters from across the years, each inspired by their appearances across the franchise's history. You had kind of seen this a little bit in the War for Cybertron trilogy, but this was the next step above. And at the same time, Transformers was going to return to television. After Netflix's War for Cybertron trilogy ended in 2021, and the oft-unseen BotBots came out in early 2022, Transformers was coming back to TV in a big way. This time titled EARTHSPARK. Set to feature a larger, more recognizable cast than we've seen in a while, with Rory McCann as Megatron, Danny Pudi as Bumblebee, and Alan Tudyk as Optimus Prime. Not even to mention it would be the first time since Transformers Prime ended in 2013 that a Transformers show would be entirely 3D animated. After getting years of shows impacted by budget cuts, it seemed Hasbro was putting some money back into the franchise on TV.
EARTHSPARK stood out to me immediately as being the first show since Prime that they're really throwing money and talent at it, and they've partnered with Nickelodeon to do it versus doing it in-house with their own with the companies they own already, as with Rescue Bots and Cyberverse. So yeah, I was a big booster of it out of the gate.
And it was going to feature some new ideas that hadn't really been seen in the franchise yet, like a handful of new characters, and the biggest reveal of all, Megatron would not be the bad guy.
You always knew how to make an entrance, Megs.
Terror in the skies.
Honor in the streets.
I mean, talk about throwing the series for a loop. A new, seemingly post-war take on Megatron that would change up the dynamic of the show in ways the franchise hadn't seen before. That sounds like fun. The show would release on Paramount Plus and Nickelodeon in the fall, and fans were beginning to gear up for the first Transformers show in a decade to be appointment viewing. I mean, you have no idea how exciting it was for the fanbase collectively to be on board with the new show. This wasn't one to skip, it was a big deal. We were all gonna watch new episodes drop every week and keep up with the latest story of the robots in disguise and what? What do you mean? Why are they doing that? Okay, so I just got word from up high that apparently the show isn't going to do a weekly release schedule. Following suit for a lot of streaming shows right now, EARTHSPARK was going to release in batches of around 10 episodes at a time, just all at once, ready to binge in one go, and that was pretty disappointing for people hoping to continue the conversation week after week. Although it was made even more bizarre when people discovered that this batch release schedule was only going to be on Paramount Plus. When on Nickelodeon, the episodes would air 1 week at a time, with the initial 2-part premiere releasing on November 11th, just like on Paramount, and the rest starting in February? What on earth is going on here? What are the people behind the scenes smoking that they've decided this is the optimum release schedule for this show? Or have they just decided to throw a bunch of darts at a board to see what would happen? I mean, why even watch it on Nickelodeon if it's all available on Paramount Plus anyway? And you know piracy's gonna be on that in no time, let's be real. So it was a real kick in the teeth for people's excitement for EARTHSPARK. It took the wind out of many people's sails. But that didn't necessarily stop people's interest altogether. It was, after all, a new Transformers show, and a new introduction to this franchise for the next generation. So fans opened up Paramount Plus on November 11th, 2022, where after nearly a decade since the last 3D animated Transformers show, the franchise was back to bring things down to earth. In this show, the Transformers have existed on Earth for quite some time. Everyone knows they exist, and for years humanity has been a subject of their long-lasting war. But it's ostensibly peacetime now. The war is over. Even while Decepticons might loom large, Megatron himself has ended his rivalry with Optimus for the betterment of all Cybertronians. Together, they've joined up with the human organization known as Ghost to help keep the Earth safe from the remaining Decepticons still at large. We visit many legacy characters in this post-war setting. We've got Optimus Prime and Megatron, of course, alongside Elita 1 and Bumblebee. And some other recurring Decepticon characters include Swindle, Hardtop, Shrapnel, Bombshell, and Skullcruncher. But while this show does feature some recognizable characters and ideas, it is mostly about the new stuff. The legacy aspects of Transformers are mostly kept to the periphery as we instead focus on the Malto family. This show is about family in the most literal sense of the word. We've got Dot and Alex, the parents, Robbie and Mo, the kids, alongside Twitch and Thrash, the Terrans. Sorry, Terrans? What are they? Twitch and Thrash are part of an all-new breed of Transformers born on Earth, created by an Ember Stone and bonded to Robbie and Mo both literally with cyber sleeves and emotionally, also through the cyber sleeves. Together with training from Bumblebee, they will embark on this show's adventures, which are mostly slice-of-life episodes. I mean, they try to herd back some cows at one point, Robbie and Mo go to school, and there are some ET-level hijinks where their connection to Twitch and Thrash kind of throws things for a loop for a bit. There's family game nights, traditions, and occasionally Bumblebee will try to squeeze in some kind of lesson for the kids to learn, which gives the season some sense of progress as it continues. All the while, they're up against the villain Dr. Meridian, also known as Mandroid, a mad scientist who's begun grafting Cybertronian limbs onto himself, starting with Hardtop's right arm. He's even got his own army of arachnomech drones that cause trouble pretty much every episode, and all of this makes for an alright TV show. This isn't a show that blew me away particularly, but it's a fun time. It has its moments. All of our characters are mostly enjoyable. Twitch is probably my favorite of the newcomers. You know, she's constantly excited to learn new things and achieve new things, which is always good. There's a lot of humor, too. This is probably the funniest that Optimus has been in a while, with plenty of gags about him trying to relate to humans, in similar ways to dads trying to relate to their kids. Like a bit where he'll text nothing but emojis, or even when he's trying to read a sales pitch and accidentally reads the stage directions instead of acting them out.
Laugh, then cool pose. Oh, ha ha ha!
One of my favorite characters has to be John Schloeder, an agent of Ghost and something of a partial antagonist voiced by Mark Evan Jackson. He's got plenty of funny lines, kinda being blinded by his pure devotion to justice.
With the Decepticon targeting youngsters, they may have heard something from their peers. Playground chatter saved my squad in the Knee Slapper Valley incident.
But for me, I think I enjoy the show most when it gets a bit more down and dirty, when things get a little more serious. The core of the Optimus-Megatron alliance is very interesting. It's obviously built for longtime fans, so new audiences might not get the same kick out of it, but it's fascinating. They're friends again, with plenty of gags they'll play on each other, but they still disagree on a great many things, especially with how to deal with the Decepticons still on the loose. And as the episodes continue, this begins to sow distrust in Ghost. You know, their tactics aren't squeaky clean. They're not all they're cracked up to be. And in an interesting turn, Dot Malto is actually way closer to Megatron than she is to Optimus. She fought beside Megatron many years ago, and the two are like best friends. By contrast, while she likes Optimus well enough, his devotion to optimism is not as appealing as Megatron's more pragmatic approach, which I think is an interesting thing the show plays with.
Optimus always sees the bright side, even when there isn't one.
And like most Transformers shows, as the festivities continue, we begin to introduce more characters for guest appearances, expanding the cast just a bit further. We've got RC, who becomes a substitute teacher for an episode with her own methods quite different from Bumblebee's. Wheeljack shows up, kind of becoming an unwitting father figure to Twitch. And then we get Soundwave, one of the A-list Decepticons who threatens the Autobots like nothing else before. He even brings along 3 cassettes: Ravage, Laserbeak, and Frenzy. Frenzy, of course, solving the Rumble is blue, Frenzy is red dilemma by being purple. but this also strengthens Megatron's core story, and provides some additional looks on how his aligning with Optimus was a total betrayal to the remaining Decepticons. Seeing that hurt from Soundwave's end just adds a whole other layer to Megatron's role here. But the A-list Decepticon roster doesn't stop there, as we also see a cameo appearance from none other than Starscream. And I'd recognize that laugh anywhere. That is Steve Blum returning to voice the character after playing him in the Dark of the Moon video game, Robots in Disguise 2015, and of course, Transformers Prime. He may have a different sound than most Starscream voice actors, but it's a unique take that quickly became a fan favorite back when Prime first started.
Why slay just one Autobot when we still have the advantage of surprise?
Skywarp and Nova Storm, however, become the centerpiece of a major sequence in the penultimate episode of this batch, as they enter a major clash with Optimus and Megatron. And this is by far the most talked about scene from the show. I mean, it's clear that this is where a good chunk of money went. The camera work is on another level of intensity, the choreography is incredible, and the animation is smooth as hell, with every character using their distinguished transforming ability to change the dynamic of the fight. Megatron especially gets plenty of spotlight here.
Storyboarding wise, visual storytelling, season 1 of EARTHSPARK is the best of the franchise. I think that is the most legitimate storyboarding team, animatic direction that the franchise has ever had. If you look at any of the portfolios and reels of the artists who worked on season 1, it's incredible stuff.
And finally, during the show's 2-part mid-season finale, 3 new Terran characters are introduced, expanding the Malto family even further with Hashtag, Jawbreaker, and Nightshade, the latter of whom explicitly goes by they-them pronouns, in a first for the franchise. It's a small moment, but a little can go a long way. It's just a fact of life in this show, and everyone, including Optimus Prime, accepts it and respects it immediately. You love to see it. Everything eventually comes to a close with an enormous battle against Mandroid and his Ultra Arachnomech. It's in some ways a departure from the smaller scale slice of life stories the show started with, and definitely early to make the leap to fighting a giant robot kaiju, but you know, it's a fun action finale that solidifies this expanded cast and gives some amount of closure to this first batch of episodes, even if season 1 has a lot more left to offer. Overall, it's solid fun. To me, EARTHSPARK doesn't have a ton to write home about, but it's a good enough time for its first stretch, and provides a bunch of new stuff to the table for new and old fans to chew on and get excited about.
When I first heard the plot of EARTHSPARK, I actually wasn't excited at all, because I just didn't know how it was going to work. But then I watched the first 3 episodes, so I thought, I vibe with this, I get along with this.
I think the first 10 episodes are really good, and they're really solid, and they're fun. I loved all the characters except Fresh. He can die as far as I'm concerned. I liked the animation, I liked the action, I thought the voice cast was good.
I think the first batch of episodes was excellent. I really liked them. I thought they were really fun. They were really just chill, and I really enjoyed them. It just felt kind of homey in a way that I'm like, oh my god, I'm watching a new Transformers cartoon. And it's fun, it's good, it's interesting. I was really happy with the first batch of episodes for the show. I really was.
By the end of it, when you've got the three extra Terrans and Mandroid and what you see the show is capable of by the end of that first block of 10 episodes, I'm like, yes, I'm fully on board with this.
It was a new and fresh take on the franchise that brought it back to the kid-friendly tone the franchise has commonly upheld. But if there was a chance you wanted something a bit darker, which Transformers has also dabbled in, perhaps it's time to turn your sights to the gaming world. Transformers has of course visited consoles a number of times, perhaps most famously with War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron in the early 2010s. But after 2015's Transformers Devastation, there hasn't been a full-fledged AAA Transformers game that everyone's on board to play. But that was about to change. For some time now, leaks had been emerging about a new large-scale game called Transformers Rise. Development had started as early as 2017 under the company Certain Affinity, which was created by Max Hoberman, a man famous for his work on the multiplayer for the original Halo trilogy. They were planning on making Transformers into another big live service, always online type of game in the vein of something like Destiny. In fact, the phrase often used for games like that is Destiny killers, which almost never proves to be true. But a number of changes on the corporate side of things managed to shake up the development quite a bit. Eventually, Certain Affinity would no longer be developing the game, and instead Splash Damage would take over, reshaping what the game would eventually be, taking it a bit more towards a single-player experience, still with the Destiny-like MMO aspects. And finally, after the dam burst on leaks, the game made an appearance at the Game Awards on December 8th, 2022. To the surprise of many Transformers fans, they were now privy to the official announcement of an all-new Transformers video game.
It's all the same. Only the names will change. And every day it seems we're wasting away.
There isn't a lot to this trailer, simply flashes of pre-rendered cutscenes showing off a team trying to repair some kind of mechanism, with flashbacks to an alien invasion. It's only after this mechanism awakens, revealing itself to be a large yellow robot, that we also reveal that this is Transformers Reactivate. Not only was it a shocking reveal, this is Transformers, but it also came with a name change. No more Transformers Rise, it's Transformers Reactivate now. Which of course raised a million questions like, who are those aliens? They don't look Cybertronian, definitely not. Maybe a Quintesson army invading Earth? Maybe something entirely new that the Autobots have to face off? Time would have to tell.
A bunch of us YouTubers all reacted to the Game Awards because we had a little bit of a hint that maybe it'll get revealed, and I remember being the first person to say, that's Cybertronian language, this is Transformers, and everyone was like, no it's not. I was excited. Of course it's a lot to live up to those games, but honestly I was just excited for another Transformers game that's a third-person shooter. I'd say I'd take anything at this stage.
Excitement skyrocketed. The fan base was starving for another true Transformers gaming experience, and this was the announcement they needed to stay afloat for just a bit longer. As 2023 kicked off, inevitably the fan base focus shifted back towards the main event during the year, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. The initial trailer had captivated fans pretty well, but it was about time for something new, which all led to the Super Bowl, where, in partnership with Porsche, Paramount released a new 30-second spot for this next foray into the Autobots story on the big screen. And it was practically nothing. Yeah, it was just 30 seconds consisting of shots we'd mostly seen before, with some quick glimpses at Mirage, who of course was going to turn into a Porsche during the movie. So while there was something, it really wasn't much to rave about. A couple shots of a car, a couple shots of Mirage, a new shot of Bumblebee, that's fun, and a bit of proof that the visual effects were improving ever so slightly as the clock ticked closer to release. But if you wanted something else to tide you over before Rise of the Beasts hits theaters in June, don't you worry. Because once again, Paramount and Nickelodeon have you covered with the second batch of episodes for Transformers EARTHSPARK. Once again featuring an absolutely insane release schedule, with the episodes dropping on Paramount Plus all at once in March, with Nickelodeon getting them weekly starting in June, for some reason. Regardless of the continuously confusing and tiring release schedule that was surely doing the show absolutely no favors, attentive fans returned to Paramount Plus on March 3rd for 8 all-new episodes with the Autobots, Decepticons, and Terrans. And these episodes overall continue the show's penchant for the slice-of-life storytelling that was prominent in the first batch, this time with the new Terrans along for the ride, featuring fun episodes like a pseudo-documentary episode where Jawbreaker is trying to interview various characters to try and figure out what his alt mode should be, even getting some insight from both Megatron and Elita 1.
Does Optimus ever do these workouts with you?
No, my routines are a little too intense for him.
There's an entire episode where the Maltos try to return a bear cub to its mother. Also, the mother bear is corrupted by space barnacles. So, Ghost is still in the background plotting things in secret. We even get a formal introduction to Executive Agent Croft, who was in the last episode of the first batch but becomes more of a figure here. She's essentially in charge of Ghost, the one running the show, and she's Schloeder's sister. But she's incredibly sketchy. There's something off with this whole operation, and it's fishy right up to her. It even starts getting to the point where Schloeder himself, who's completely devoted to Ghost as a cause, is starting to question her motives a little bit. Which kind of ties into the central message this batch is trying to go for, which is that you shouldn't necessarily take things at face value. Don't judge a book by its cover. There's more to these characters than meets the eye. That extends to Schloeder potentially turning against Ghost, and it extends to the new Terrans picking their alt modes. The alt modes are extensions of each of them, built off of their personality. Hashtag is the iPad kid of the family, always with the phone. So she winds up becoming a Ghost surveillance vehicle, able to tap into the internet anytime, anywhere. This even allows her to become a walking hacking machine, which helps the heroes when they get into scrapes. Nightshade initially doesn't actually want an alt mode at first, but soon they begin to figure out who they are. They're a genius and a protector, so they take on the form of a sentry owl, which in some ways evokes the imagery of Batman. Nightshade the superhero? That also expands the limits of what your alt mode can be. It's not just cars, trucks, planes, you can also be animals. Jawbreaker, however, doesn't quite figure it out in this batch, which is fine. Maybe he'll get him next time. This drive to look beyond the surface also comes with some of the new characters. Breakdown is introduced during this batch, a Decepticon who has a rivalry with Bumblebee, though it's not based on the battle lines drawn during the war, it's based on their semi-brotherhood from before that, and a contest to see who's the fastest of the two of them. Tarantulas is involved. He's a Decepticon scientist who's really only trying to evade capture from Ghost and live a free life. He's not there to hurt anyone, which is definitely a new take on a character who, in Beast Wars, was a bit of a wild, mad scientist who got killed by aliens after his hubris got the better of him. Megatron also gets some time to play in this particular sandbox, with a greater expansion into his history and the choice he made to turn against the other Decepticons and help Optimus win the war. We even get flashbacks to that climactic battle, even featuring the ALLSPARK, which looks remarkably similar to its appearance in the first live-action movie. This also comes with a clash between Megatron and Shockwave, continuing to drum up some of Megatron's history and the perception among the other Decepticons that he is a traitor. But probably the biggest element of this don't judge a book by its cover idea comes in the fact that this batch dives into a very real prejudice humanity has for the Transformers. It's in many ways an allegory for discrimination, or even immigration, which might not 100% work because the Transformers here have done things to garner real, genuine fear.
In EARTHSPARK, people are afraid of the Transformers for the destruction they bring, when they very obviously do bring mass destruction, so it might be not the most sensitive thing to be comparing immigrants to the Transformers who destroy the city in every episode.
But with the nuance the show wants to explore, there are still villains afoot trying to ruin everything. Because during the two-part episode that closes out this batch, we reveal an underground Transformer fighting ring, featuring characters like Brawl and even Grimlock. That's crazy. Love seeing that big guy around. Although he, and this entire setup, is being controlled by none other than Dr. Meridian Mandroid. He's still alive, still kicking, deliberately stoking fear among people about the Transformers. And now he's even got 2 Cybertronian arms, as he's taken Brawl's left arm for himself. Though it seems that amount of Cybertronian tech, that amount of energon, is beginning to corrupt him in ways he didn't anticipate. Ultimately, through the power of family, Mandroid is defeated once again. But he's not down for the count, as we eventually reveal that he's been working with Executive Agent Croft and Ghost behind the scenes. I knew there was something up with those guys. Maybe it's a good thing to judge a book by its cover. Ghost had villain written all over them. Wait, I don't know if that's the right message to take away. Overall, this second batch continued the show's solid streak. It's fun, if not groundbreaking, but with plenty of moments, particularly with Nightshade, that fans pointed to as fantastic. This pure acceptance of who they are and how they feel about themselves is inspiring to a great many fans out there, which is always nice. Fans of the show could also journey to toy stores to get their hands on all new EARTHSPARK toys, which were not that great. Yeah, they were mostly cheap toys or even just reissues of Cyberverse toys from a couple years ago, so there's not much to really look out for the show that's currently on air, unfortunately. However, some of the other lines were doing pretty good. Legacy was now in its second year and kicking off its second wave titled Legacy Evolution, expanding to a bunch of new characters and a bunch of new franchises throughout the year, continuing to combine the different eras of Transformers into one major line. At the same time, Rise of the Beast toys were beginning to be leaked, with people getting their first look at many of the characters, including Wheeljack, who didn't look a whole awful lot like Wheeljack. This caused a storm online, let me tell you. People were upset that Wheeljack had been redesigned for the movie. Gone were the blinky ears and the white, red, and green color scheme. Instead, we've got the biggest nerd you've ever seen in your life. No, not me. Now, to be perfectly clear, I do prefer the G1 design. There's just something about the face mask and the blinky ears that 100% works for me. Even the Wheeljack in Transformers Prime works for me. Personality-wise, he's about as far from G1 Wheeljack as you can get. Instead of being the scientist of the team, he's one of the strongest warriors, but he still carries that look. This, on the other hand, doesn't quite fit that aesthetic, really. Not to say it's bad, there are plenty of things to enjoy, like the seatbelt suspenders, I think that's fun. I just like the other one better. Eventually, after the fan base freakout had mostly subsided, fans took to calling this new design Pablo. Mainly because on his alt mode in the movie, the words TV Pablo are seen. So, welcome to the franchise, Pablo. But by far the most exciting thing regarding toys right now, at least to me, was an expansion to the Studio Series line. Now, Studio Series was introduced in 2018 as a way of exploring the Bayverse or live-action characters in the modern day. Many of those characters haven't had toys since 2007 at the earliest, or maybe never got toys at all. So Studio Series could bring in 10 plus years of engineering advancement to return these characters to toy shelves. Although of course while it started as something exclusive to the live action movies, it eventually expanded beyond that. G1 of course got a movie in 1986, so that means G1 toys can now be part of the line, all under Studio Series 86, and now it was announced that Studio Series would expand once again with Gamer Edition. A line that would bring video game Transformers characters to life, starting with War for Cybertron. Now this was exciting, and it was in fact the first moment in years that I decided to pick up a new Transformers toy. I had to get War for Cybertron Optimus once I had the chance. He's so cool. But the possibilities of what this line could do is even more exciting. I mean, it's starting with War for Cybertron figures like Optimus, Bumblebee, Megatron, Barricade, even a generic Decepticon. Eventually, Ratchet, Ironhide, Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp would come into play in the following couple years. But it also means Gamer Edition can see characters like Warpath from Dark of the Moon, Breakaway from Revenge of the Fallen, and in the most exciting news to me, Fall of Cybertron could get some spotlight too. With characters like Jazz, Grimlock, the whole Dinobot team, the Combaticons who can combine into Bruticus, and the new forms from Megatron and Optimus Prime. And I know it's a controversial take, but as much as I do like the War for Cybertron Optimus design, I think I like his Fall of Cybertron look even more. I mean, all the cool bits moving around on his back, that's good stuff right there. So the day Gamer Edition finally gets around to Fall of Cybertron, and the day Hasbro decides to make that version of Optimus Prime into a modern-day toy, that's gonna be a good day. Also, if Hasbro wanted to go bankrupt, or make everyone else go bankrupt, they could make Omega Supreme, Trypticon, and Metroplex if they wanted. I wouldn't complain. So in many ways, the toys were doing very well. Despite the market itself hurting for the past 15 years, Transformers was still finding ways to be exciting, at least for the more collector-oriented buyers. But of course, with the weeks ticking by, eyes began turning towards the main event on the horizon as the release of Rise of the Beasts was drawing closer. Eventually, it was finally announced that a second trailer would be launching at the end of April, which sent the fanbase into a frenzy. Here we go, it's time for some all-new Rise of the Beast footage. The Super Bowl spot might not have had anything new, but once things turned to April 27th, the second trailer was about to expand to levels we hadn't seen before.
Prime. This is about the fate of all living things. Unicron is coming.
Whoa, I'm sorry. What? Are you saying that this Beast Wars movie also has Unicron in it? I had heard whispers before this from leaks that Unicron was going to be part of it, but I didn't believe them. Are you kidding me? Unicron now? But there's no denying it anymore. We got 2 major money shots of Unicron in here, with him clearly being the main threat against our heroes this time.
In the end, everything you cared for will be consumed.
Though I did have the realization with this trailer, and I wasn't necessarily alone, that it was maybe showing off a bit too much. I mean, Unicron feels like a big reveal you'd keep for the movie, that's one thing. But based on the scenes we've gotten so far, you can piece together a lot of what's going to happen here, including around Bumblebee's supposed death. Like, he gets stabbed here, but he's back for what clearly appears to be the grand finale. Like, his death will happen much earlier in the movie, and the moment of him jumping out of the airplane and taking guys out will be after he comes back. I did know many people who believed that this trailer was still only scratching the surface, and that there was a lot more to uncover with the final movie, and I did hope they were right, but part of me was wondering if they'd overplayed their hand. At the very least, this is still an exciting trailer with tons of cool shots, and even one big action moment circling around the Autobots and the Maximals dealing with an army of bad guys. That's good stuff. But while Rise of the Beast was of course the next big thing for Transformers, it was not alone on Paramount's slate for upcoming movies, because they had also been working hard on an animated movie confusingly titled Transformers 1. Now, this has been in development for a long time. It all started back in 2015 where it was pitched and greenlit as part of the writer's room they set up before The Last Night came out, all to expand the Transformers universe on the big screen. Which of course never quite worked out the way they wanted to, but at least 2 projects managed to survive, one being the Bumblebee movie, the other being Transformers 1. A movie taking place millions of years earlier, following the origin story of Optimus and Megatron and the dawn of the war for Cybertron. Very exciting stuff, and an incredible premise for those who've been following Transformers all this time. Fans have been wanting a Cybertron set movie for years. Maybe this was the chance. And eventually things finally started moving forward when Josh Cooley signed on to direct, having previously helmed Toy Story 4 for Pixar, which, while it wasn't flawless, I think is a very good movie, and probably one of the best looking Pixar movies ever. I mean, look at this stuff, man. It looks like it's being shot on an anamorphic lens, the texture and detail is incredible, there's even a split diopter shot. But of course, since it's an animated movie, the production on Transformers 1 was able to keep itself under wraps. There's no set videos to leak if you never once shoot on set. But now, the very same day Paramount dropped the second Rise of the Beast trailer, they were also visiting CinemaCon in Las Vegas, where they revealed some key details for Transformers 1, including the cast. The 6 main stars were going to take on the central characters in the movie. Who are we gonna get? Peter Cullen? Frank Welker? Are we gonna do an animated return and have David Kaye and Corey Burton come back as Optimus and Megatron? Gary Chalk and David Kaye in a movie like Beast Wars and the Unicron trilogy? Will Neil Kaplan come back? They could do anything. So let's read through the cast list, let's see what they're cooking up for Transformers 1. Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime, Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron, Scarlett Johansson as Elita 1, Keegan-Michael Key as Bumblebee, John Hamm as Sentinel Prime, and Lawrence Fishburne as Alpha Trion. What? No, seriously, what? What do you mean? Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime? What? I gotta admit, the first time I saw this list, I thought it was a joke. Obviously, the Mario movie cast announcement was recent, and I was like, this has to be someone's Transformers-themed parody of that, right? But no, it was real. And boy, did it cause a stir. The discourse surrounding this was crazy. How exactly was this going to work?
I do remember opening my phone and seeing the discussing film post. I was like, all of these massive name actors in this movie. I was like, what? Like, that's insane. That was crazy to me.
When I saw Chris Hemsworth, I was just went, oh my god, really? I kind of had too much of Chris Hemsworth at that time. I love Peter Cullen. We all love Peter Cullen. You know, he is the GOAT. He is the one and only. For most of us, I've never been like, we need Peter Cullen. It's just a treat to have him. So when it came to Transformers 1, Chris Hemsworth, I was like, hang on a minute. I'm probably thinking too rash because I bet he's going to surprise me. When I started to think about how his voice would sound, I kind of got it. I understood it.
I'm going to be honest, I actually did not mind. I kind of assumed it was going to be like an Orion Pax kind of story. And I think it does make sense to cast someone that's more younger sounding, but still has a little bit of that deep bass like cadence that Peter Cullen has. Yeah, I didn't really mind because I actually saw the vision and I could see what they were trying to go for.
Obviously, as a fan of like actual voice actors, you'd love to see actual voice actors getting those roles. So I was a little bit concerned about that, but putting that empathy for voice actors aside, I was like, this cast is so weird and I'm so curious. So I was excited to see whatever the hell that turned out to be.
I remember hearing the cast list and I thought, okay, let's see how this works. I guess I was trepidatious when I heard it. I saw the cast list and thought, okay, I have no idea what they're going to sound like. I cannot imagine how it's going to work, but I'm going to see what they can do with this. And I was cautiously optimistic that it might work out.
While, going for celebrities over seasoned voice talent is never great, I think more and more in this day and age, the celebrities are nailing it. I've never been anybody who ever was like, Peter Cullen is the only Optimus Prime. But a guy loves voicing Prime, and I would never take it away from him. But this is a story about little baby Prime before he was Prime. Peter Cullen could never have voiced him in this film, Chris Hemsworth, sure, that's the kind of energy you'd want from a young Prime, is an energy Chris Hemsworth can channel.
Unfortunately, I happen to fall into the camp of disappointment. This was not what I expected at all. In many ways, it's probably tough to expect Peter Cullen and Frank Welker, who've been playing Optimus and Megatron for so long, to be able to capture their younger selves in this movie. But I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be over the moon for their casting. In many ways, this did feel like stunt casting, and it really did take the wind out of my sails particularly. I mean, I've wanted a Cybertron set movie for years, but this cast announcement was so out of left field I was left scratching my head thinking, oh no, what if they mess it up? And it was hard to get rid of that feeling, unfortunately. But, like many others, I wanted to do my best to hold out hope. I at least wanted to hear what these voices would sound like before making any final judgment call. At the very least, Rise of the Beast promotion began to take over from here. As the movie's release drew closer, the promotion throughout May hit a major stride. We got a batch of new TV spots, we got some exclusive clips from the movie, we got a bunch of new posters as the weeks continued, and we even got a final trailer just days before the movie was set to hit theaters, which kind of included everything already in the TV spots, filling in a lot of the gaps we hadn't seen yet. Again, perhaps they were overplaying their hand, with reveals in the TV spots that probably could have waited until people were in the theater to see the movie. If you were paying close attention, and believe me, many Transformers fans were, you were privy to about 90% of what this movie was going to be, even if you didn't quite know it yet. But that didn't stop the theories from flowing, as many people were holding out with the belief that there was still plenty more the marketing hadn't shown off yet. In fact, there was one major popular theory regarding the lead villain, Scourge, who was going to be voiced by Peter Dinklage. The theory suggested that, in a way to cap off the Michael Bay movies and fully declare this new movie and Bumblebee as part of a new continuity, Scourge would actually be Bayverse Prime from the future. He'd have been corrupted by Unicron and sent back to this new universe to face off against these Autobots and this version of Optimus. Now, initially I thought the likelihood of doing this was really low, and some of the evidence felt more like conspiracies than anything concrete. But after thinking about it a little bit more, I became kind of interested in the idea. Like, imagine some time travel shenanigans and Optimus encountering this older, more beaten down version of himself that's been corrupted. There's some meat there. Maybe they are holding out on us a little bit. At the same time, the marketing went global with life-size statues of Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal making the rounds worldwide, showing off their scale and designs to everyone they could. And there was even a new single by Toby Nwigwe called On My Soul, which was going to follow the long-standing pattern of new songs making their way onto the credits of Transformers movies. But even beyond all of that, there was one aspect of promotion that was bigger than any other. Trailers? Pshaw! TV spots? Get out of here. A worldwide statue tour? That's nothing. Everything paled in comparison to the fact that Transformers did a crossover with Fortnite, introducing skins for Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal. Primal was purchasable right off the bat if you had the V-Bucks, but Prime had to be acquired through leveling up the Battle Pass. But this now meant you could head out onto the island as either of these two characters and knock down people all across the battlefield. Not to mention you could now do 1 million emotes and get Optimus Prime to do crazy things he otherwise wouldn't.
Mr. Fortnite, you have solved my cool temple puzzle. My awesome smaller son will now hit the gritty just for you.
I mean, the kind of stuff you can get Optimus to do in Fortnite, it's crazy. You don't get this anywhere else. Now, while people could head out into the Battle Royale as these characters, the time had come to see some of them on the big screen once and for all. Eventually, after months of anticipation and reveals, the movie was now going to hit theaters. After nearly 5 years since the Bumblebee movie reignited a spark of hope among Transformers fans, the franchise was back on the big screen with a premise bigger than any other. The Autobots would have to team up with the Maximals to face off against the Terracons and defeat Unicron. If that doesn't sound like a blockbuster, then I don't know what does. So fans got ready for a return to form, for the next big foray onto the big screen, the next adventure with these characters. The clock had finally turned to June 9th, 2023. So grab your popcorn and take your seats, because it's now time to witness the rise. I think the opening scene of this movie is pretty cool. I mean, after getting more cool logo sounds at the very beginning, we're launched to an alien planet where we're introduced to Unicron and the Maximals, including Optimus Primal, Airazor, Cheetor, Rhinox, and Ape-Link, which raises some questions like, why are there 2 gorillas? That's a little confusing, especially to 99.9% of the world's population who will have no idea Ape-Link is even a character. I didn't even know Ape-Link was a guy before this movie came out, and I'm in the sauce. But it presents some big action, sets up some of the stakes, and also sees this money shot of Unicron eating an entire world. It's taking us back to the days of the 1986 movie, and gives Unicron a level of scale you can't quite achieve anywhere else. From here, things get substantially smaller, as we begin to focus on our main human characters Noah Diaz and Elena Wallace. Noah Diaz is an older brother trying to find a job to provide for his family and pay his younger brother's hospital bills. He's been given the shaft by practically everyone he can find, but hey, his brother's really funny.
Okay, what are the rules?
Bros before hoes.
And Elena Wallace is overqualified and underserved at her job at the museum, leading her to discover things that others have missed. Separately, they wind up becoming entwined in this larger story, a plot to find the transwarp key. Elena finds one half of it while Noah meets with the Autobots. We got Optimus Prime, Mirage, Bumblebee RC, eventually we even have Wheeljack and Stratosphere, the latter of whom is mostly just a transport for our main characters. He doesn't do much else. And they're all going up against our villains, the Terracons, Scourge, Nightbird, and Battletrap, who are big, tough, and servants of Unicron, hunting down the transwarp key to bring their master to Earth to destroy the world. And overall, I think there's a lot of fun to be seen here. A lot of the introductions to our human characters are pretty fun. I especially like Reek, who gets a couple fun moments at the start, kind of raising his fist to the system holding everybody down.
But them rich cats in there, they give a ton of paper to charities every year to make themselves feel better. Hell, if you look at it from a holistic perspective, we doing them a favor. Hey, yo, you're welcome! Yo, stop!
And I think there are a few standout sequences like the Mirage chase scene through New York City. I mean, we've got some hologram gags, and my favorite bit, him transforming mid-drive to turn around. Something we've never seen someone do before, but is a great new addition to what Transformers can do.
Yo, nah! Nah.
Mirage in general is a lot of fun, I think. With a voice by Pete Davidson, he is without a doubt the comic relief, and definitely the kid appeal character, which in some ways is not really what you'd expect Pete Davidson to play, but...
We're just work friends.
Work friends? You've been inside me.
I think overall, this is an alright time at the movies with plenty of moments to keep you going. I also think it is a rather substantial step backwards. I had a number of issues with the Michael Bay movies, which only got increasingly more apparent the longer that series went and the more they kept doing the same things over and over again. But with Bay out of the director's chair, I was really thinking we'd be able to move past that, and we really did with Bumblebee. You know, that was a change of pace, and I think even going back to something bigger isn't a bad idea. I like big. But this movie has gone back and done a lot of the same things I had issues with in the previous 5, with a couple more tacked on for good measure. For one thing, it's the same movie again. The whole thing centers around a MacGuffin. We've now had the Allspark, the Matrix, the Pillars, the Seed, the Staff, and now the Transwarp Key. The movie also opens with narration and backstory establishing said MacGuffin. Beyond that, most of the robot characters are only there to fill in crowd shots. I mean, all that discourse around Wheeljack's design, only for him to be relegated to mostly standing in the background silently. We reveal that the Transformers have somehow impacted humanity. We even visit another country and visit a wonder of the world. The movie ends with another planet showing up to attack the Earth. A major character dies partway through only to come back towards the end. Because yes, Bumblebee dies and comes back, just like it was revealed in the trailer. But unlike Optimus' story in Revenge of the Fallen, which entirely centered around a quest to locate the Matrix to bring him back, here Bumblebee is placed on a rock filled with energon that is then randomly activated during the final battle, bringing him back to life. The moment Bumblebee comes back and jumps out of Stratosphere is cool. I like the scene quite a bit, but on a dramatic level, it's no different than if he just went somewhere else for a while. It just completely undercuts the stakes of death and takes teeth away from something that really should have teeth. The second half of the movie introduces a new character or group of characters who either help the fight or illuminate the story in some way, sometimes both. The first movie had the Autobots, the second one had Jetfire, the third one had the Wreckers, although that's a bit of a stretch, the fourth one had the Dinobots, the fifth one had the Guardian Knights, and now here we have the Maximals. The Maximals have a disappointing amount of screen time in this movie despite being the subject of the movie's title. You know, the Beasts aren't doing a hell of a lot of rising here.
It reminds me of Age of Extinction in that the Dinobots were so irrelevant to that movie, and the Beasts were so irrelevant to Rise of the Beasts. Like, they just showed up, did nothing, and left.
Cheetor and Rhinox especially get nothing to do. Rhinox doesn't even get a speaking line.
We gotta give her some cover!
We'll clear the way!
Unless you count that, which might be Rhinox, but it also might be Primal. It's kind of a coin flip, it's hard to tell. Air-Razor gets a bit more, but she's completely underserved by a lackluster death. Like, she gets poisoned by Scourge at one point, and then Optimus Primal crushes her to death? I'm pretty sure that's what's happening here. She doesn't even get to show off her robot mode, or get into a quasi-relationship with Tigatron, a character not in this movie. For all the movie's posturing that it's adapting Beast Wars things, it's really not adapting much of anything Beast Wars. I mean, there's no Predacons, there's no Rat Trapper Dinobot who are hugely important to the show. The characters aren't even from the future, they're from another planet, which changes things altogether. Worse yet, while this movie does follow another MacGuffin, it's not the Beast Wars MacGuffin of the Golden Disc, which would make total sense. Instead, it's the Transwarp Key, which unfortunately makes very little sense. Dramatically, it functions identically to the AllSpark in the first one. It's the thing the Autobots need to restore Cybertron, but ultimately have to destroy for the greater good of the Earth. Here, though, it's presented as both the only thing that can bring the Autobots back to Cybertron, and also the only thing that can get Unicron to another planet to consume. But the Autobots got from Cybertron to Earth using spaceships, so why can't they use one of them now? It's not like they can't steal something from humanity. Wheeljack could probably modify a space shuttle to get them where they need to go. And why is Unicron so desperate for the key? He says he's growing hungry without it, so clearly he can't reach another planet, but he knows he can move, right? Has he just eaten every world in whatever galaxy he's in? Is he so far away from any other planet that he'll starve before he reaches it? In that case, destroying the Transwarp Key and trapping him should be a done deal. Just leave him out there to starve to death. Which is also probably the lamest way for Unicron to go out.
You fool!
But while this movie is, in a lot of ways, the same as all 5 of the Bay movies, there is one significant difference. It looks like concrete. This movie has that digital MCU milky gray color grade that has only begun to look worse as time has gone on. The more movies that look like this, the worse it gets. It's so washed out, it's filled with soft lighting, every scene is set in a partially overcast day. While daytime scenes are definitely the worst, the nighttime scenes don't fare that much better. Especially when you compare them to how much more vibrant the nighttime scenes were in the previous movies. Like, you take this moment in Rise of the Beast and compare it to this moment in the first Michael Bay movie, it's, well, not quite night and day, but you can see the difference. There's so much blue in the older one, it's awesome. You know, say what you will about the Michael Bay movies, and I've said plenty, but he was pumping color into those things, let me tell you. But weirdly enough, there's also a subtle visual difference you can spot between this movie's two visual effects houses. MPC, or Motion Picture Company, did most of the visual effects for this movie. They of course had a major hand in the live-action Lion King from 2019. But in August of 2022, Weta Effects jumped on board, creating the opening scene and completely redoing the finale, which explains why it looks so different in the trailers compared to the final movie. Weta, of course, are famous for the visual effects work on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy, the Avatar movies, tons of big stuff. And here you can kind of tell that they operate the camera differently. Since the two major sections they worked on are almost entirely CG, they have total control of how the camera moves. So during the Weta scenes, we have more rack focus changes, there are some slight Dutch tilts, the camera's shaking a bit from the intensity. The finale is probably the most gray part of the movie, and in that way, it's all really ugly, but in terms of animation and camera movement, this stuff is a step above what the rest of the movie is doing. The MPC sequences just aren't shot like this. Which also raises the question of how much control or vision does Stephen Caple Jr. have as a director? If the visual effects houses can make their scenes look noticeably different, how much of a key visual style does Caple have? Shots like Scourge emerging from the trees only appear during the Weta scenes. Was that Caple's idea, or was that someone at Weta coming up with a cool shot that he signed off on? But all of that pales in comparison to the single biggest issue I have with this movie. An issue so significant that it negatively colors my entire experience watching this movie, no matter how much I try and focus on what I like. Optimus Prime. This has got to be one of the worst iterations of Optimus we've ever gotten, and I'm totally aware that my dislike of this version is purely because I like this character so much. It wouldn't bother me if I wasn't such a big fan of the character, but I really have one major question. Why is he racist?
I should have known better than to rely on humans.
Optimus starts this movie as such a grump, dude. He hates humanity for some reason, not trusting Noah Diaz at all to carry out the mission. All of which is to serve an arc where he ultimately learns to trust Noah and humanity at large, becoming more like the Optimus we all know. Which on paper is a solid arc, and I do like how it mirrors Noah's journey through the movie. For the longest time, I've been wanting these movies to explore an actual character arc with one of the robots, and now Rise of the Beasts has finally offered one. It's only a shame that I don't like the arc. Optimus is the type of character that, immediately after arriving on Earth and seeing humanity for the first time, he will strive to protect them no matter what. He recognizes that he's bigger and stronger, and that it's his duty to make sure the humans aren't harmed under his watch.
Perhaps you can condone widespread human casualties, Agent Fowler. I, however, cannot.
Which even extends back to the first live-action movie. In his first 24 hours on Earth, Optimus is given plenty of reasons to hate humanity. They have just captured one of his team members, one of his best friends, and are now actively torturing and experimenting on him. The other Autobots around him are starting to question whether they should fight for humanity. You know, they should just grab the AllSpark and go. But Optimus reassures them when he says,
They're a young species. They have much to learn. But I've seen goodness in them. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
Optimus has only been on Earth for a day at this point, and he's already saying he will die to protect humanity. But here, in Rise of the Beasts, he just doesn't like humans. And what's worse is that he's not even given a reason to. It's just baseless prejudice. Which is wild because Age of Extinction of all movies got that part right. Don't misunderstand, Age of Extinction is a bad movie, and that version of Optimus is probably the single worst one we've ever gotten. But it at least understood that for Optimus to be mad at humans, they kinda had to kill all of his friends first. Here, he's got nothing. Here, he has evidence to support how good humanity is, with examples like Charlie Watson, something Bumblebee rightfully points out.
They are my friends. I know one was good to you, B, but this is not our world.
Wait, did Optimus just pull the "she's one of the good ones" card? What is wrong with you, dude?
You can't handle the truth!
I do not want you going to that drive-in theater anymore.
You're such a dick, Optimus. He's also still, for some reason, a bloodthirsty maniac. This was something I was so hopeful we'd finally moved past. You know, Michael Bay had turned Optimus into a raging psychopath, but without him in the director's chair, someone would be able to find the actual core of this character and bring it to the big screen. Now, obviously Optimus doesn't have a no-killing rule like Batman or Superman, and there are plenty of moments of him nearly taking the shot to kill Megatron once and for all.
Do you intend to take me alive? Or end this here and now?
But I don't think Optimus should be talking about killing people this much, nor should he be enjoying killing people as much as he does. The moment where he and Primal team up to defeat Battletrap is fun on the surface, but then he says,
"He was mine."
Why are you treating murder like it's on a scoreboard? This isn't a contest to see who can get the best kill cam.
I'm going to take back Scourge's key and then take off his head.
Shut up, dude. Why are you putting this much energy into Scourge of all people anyway? I mean, I get he killed Bumblebee, but you're treating him like he's your ultimate enemy. This isn't Megatron, dude. Scourge is a one-and-done villain. You should be genre savvy enough to know that. Come on. There's all this talk about killing Scourge right from the get-go, and no one ever suggests an alternative. No one ever suggests that maybe there's another way. Which is crazy because Optimus would be the first to figure out another way.
A small part of me hoped to change Megatron's mind, not extinguish his spark.
Which could have landed especially well if, walk with me here, Scourge was actually Bay vs. Prime from the future. Now, do I think this is the greatest idea of all time? Maybe not. Would it have been something interesting? Absolutely. Imagine this version of Optimus sees this dark reflection of himself and realizes the path he's on. What if he got that dose of reality and changed for the better? Of course, Scourge isn't Bay vs. Prime from the future. In fact, he's kind of nobody. Like, they do a whole mask reveal and everything, and then he's just some guy? They don't even have anything interesting to say with that. Which is a shame because apparently there was a lot of cut stuff from Scourge, which would have revealed his backstory and how he was enslaved by Unicron after his world was destroyed. Imagine Optimus learned that and then tried to reason with Scourge. Tried to get through and say, hey, you don't have to follow Unicron. Then Scourge can be like, hell no, I serve Unicron. Which leaves Optimus no choice but to kill him. Like, at least do something. But no, it's all about killing Scourge from the start. Optimus says he's gonna do it, and then at the end, he does it.
Time to show you the real power of the Prime!
Worse yet, the method of tearing his head and spine out? I've seen it before. Can't even get an original kill in here. There's still fun stuff in this finale, like the Maximals and Autobots charging together, even though once the Maximals are in robot form, you can't tell them apart. They probably could have taken more cues from their Beast Wars designs, which were much easier to distinguish in robot form. Or at least make it so that they're in robot form before this, so people know what to look out for. Mirage kinda sorta dies during this battle, and then Noah wears him as a power suit, which is cool, but also weird. Like, I know Mirage is technically still alive at this point, but it's weird that Noah is wearing his corpse into battle. And it all wraps up with Noah and Primal teaming up to rescue Optimus Prime. Together as one, as they say. So the transwarp key is destroyed, Unicron is trapped in another galaxy, and while they say he might come back, I have no reason to suspect he can, really. At least not in a way that doesn't undermine this movie's victory. And like all the other movies, once the villains are defeated and the plot is over, we quickly flash to the closing narration and close out the movie right away. No need to linger any more than we have to. Except, once the closing narration from both Optimus and Noah wraps up, we then get another 5-minute scene. Now, on its own, the scene is paced totally fine. In a vacuum, I have no real issue with this at all. But after getting the climax and the closing narration and all the signs that we were going to slam to the credits, getting another 5 minutes of movie is really jarring. Like, it drags so much because everything said the movie was over, but we're not done yet. There's some big stuff in here though, because Noah is being interviewed by this guy who might initially seem like any other boss or interviewer, until it's revealed that he knows all about Noah's adventures with the Autobots. Apparently he works for a secret government organization that's looking to recruit Noah. And of course this whole scene I'm thinking, it's Sector 7, surely. But to my surprise, the movie's got something totally different in mind.
G.I. Joe.
Oh. Alright, I guess we're setting up G.I. Joe to be part of the Transformers series going forward, which garnered mixed reception. Of course, starving G.I. Joe fans were cheering about the fact that they might be getting more stuff, but many Transformers fans were grumbling because they don't really care about G.I. Joe. But hey, at least Mirage is alive, we at least have that. Overall, this movie is alright. Despite my rather significant issues with it, it's mostly a fun time. Reviews were also mostly positive, if not over the moon. You know, this movie doesn't have a ton of remarkable elements, it's a standard mid-level blockbuster. Probably the most average one we've gotten, which is probably why it didn't do spectacularly well at the box office. Once all was said and done, Rise of the Beast managed to rake in $157 million domestically and $441 million worldwide, once again becoming the lowest grossing Transformers movie yet, outside of the 1986 one. We've been on a downswing since Dark of the Moon. I mean, that movie cracked $1 billion worldwide, Age of Extinction made a little bit less, The Last Knight made a lot less, Bumblebee made less than that, and now Rise of the Beast has made less than that. I don't know about you, but I'm not a particularly big fan of that pattern. It's not great. Still, there were a number of people within the franchise who came out of this movie incredibly positive. Lots of people had a great time.
I watched the film so many times in the cinemas as well. I took pretty much everyone I knew to go watch this film. I really wasn't left disappointed afterwards. You always have your criticisms, but I was pretty pleased with it, to be honest. And I thought Stephen Caple Jr., I think he still did a really good job.
When I first saw the movie, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was everything it needed me to be. It was not perfect. The movie obviously had problems, but the movie itself, extremely happy with it. I was so happy with it, and I still call it my favorite Transformers live action movie because it is my favorite. I just love it so much. That's all the elements I want over the other movies.
Since the movie has come out and I've almost kind of had time away from it and I've jumped back into the community, I appreciate it much more now for what it did and what it does as a whole. Now I look back at it and think, no, yeah, it's a fun time. I think it's a fun movie, and I think I actually have some of the toys now. They're pretty fun.
Of all the people I talked to, however, Chris McFeely had the most uniquely positive experience when it came to seeing Rise of the Beast for the first time.
I was very lucky in that I was invited to the Irish premiere of Rise of the Beasts. I knew when that happened that I would never be able to have a normal opinion about the film. Because I've never had anything like that. I've never been invited to anything like that before. So yeah, I can certainly say that I hold a generally positive impression of Rise of the Beasts. Having, lived through so many changes of the brand, I wasn't disappointed in its handling of the Beast Wars characters, generally speaking. Sure, it'd been nice if Rhinox and Cheetor could have done a little more, but I wasn't mad about them being reimagined as from another planet or whatever. I felt like the core idea of the Maximals, advanced Transformers who use a transwarp device to explore other worlds and interact with their local populations and everything. That feels like the core of the Maximals was preserved to me,
But while many were positive, some were certainly a bit more negative and not quite as forgiving to the movie's issues.
I thought it was really mid and kind of boring, and I was disappointed.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was very disappointing. Yeah, I watched it with some friends too, and we were all kind of like, it was okay, But, this is Transformers. Like, I love Transformers. I know it can be amazing. I've seen it done before. I've seen it in Transformers Prime, in the games. Even the first Transformers film, Michael Bay, I think that was a great movie. I know Transformers can be more than meets the eye.
Made it kind of clear that they were not just doing a spiritual successor to Bumblebee, but they were trying to go back to the Michael Bay-isms after Bumblebee underperformed. It's like they're trying to recreate Bay without Bay being behind the camera, and it just came off as kind of a pale imitation. They were trying to go back to the Michael Bay-isms of before, but they didn't have him. It just seemed kind of sauceless.
I'm certainly not blind to criticism of it. I think everybody agrees the final act veered a little in the final act of an MCU grey CGI sludge sort of approach versus the bombast of the Bay films, which tended to base the ground theirs in real environments, and in the best instances, in cities with a real sense of scale and real human protagonists, a real sense of danger and stakes.
Paperplane even went on to make a nearly 3-hour-long video about his thoughts on the movie and why exactly it disappointed him the way it did.
I was writing a video about humans in Transformers. I realized I was writing a lot about Rise of the Beast. And so I was like, well, I could just make an extended thing about Rise of the Beast. And then it just kept getting longer. And I realized I just had so many thoughts on it that were just buried.
But even among those that had their issues, there were some elements, one in particular, that stuck out.
I think the funniest thing about Rise of the Beast, what I'll always think about, is the character Transit.
Before Rise of the Beast came out, there were leaked promotional stills featuring control art of each of the robot characters. Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, RC, Wheeljack, whoever. But among them was this guy, Transit, a Decepticon that would turn into a bus. He was said to be part of the opening scene of the movie, introducing Optimus Prime. But sometime during the last couple months it got completely removed and replaced with the maximal opening we got. Remnants still exist, it's why when Optimus Prime finally does show up in the movie, he emerges in a bus yard, he just doesn't fight Transit anymore.
Ironically, people began championing this character, only to eventually learn he was cut from the entire movie. And that was one of the funniest things that's ever happened. And that made him infinitely more memorable than if he had just been in the movie. I cannot think about Rise of the Beast without thinking of Transit. That is the first thing that pops in my mind.
Eventually, as the movie was released on digital and Blu-ray over the summer, this initial scene was released, with unfinished visual effects and everything, so people got to see what Transit's appearance was gonna look like. And one of the major things coming out of that was people said this would have fixed a lot of issues, because it reveals that Optimus was looking for a ship to go back to Cybertron, which adds weight to the transwarp key being the last resort, and it even keeps the Decepticons kind of in your mind even if they're not a major focus. But to go against popular thinking for a moment, I think this scene sucks. For two reasons. One is that before this scene starts, Transit hasn't done anything. Optimus just shows up and his presence causes an attack. It's like at the start of Revenge of the Fallen when Demolisher and Sideways are just sitting there peacefully, and it's actually the arrival of the Autobots and Nest that causes all the chaos and destruction that comes after. The other thing, I hate Optimus here. He's even more angry and vengeful in this scene than he is in the rest of the movie.
I came for your ship. Give it up, and I will not destroy you.
You suck so much, dude. And finally, as the scene draws to a close, Transit manages to get Optimus angry enough to do this.
You'll never see Cybertron again. You will die here on this miserable planet.
Why does Optimus always have to resort to point-blank executions? Why can't he just be a nice guy?
No, Optimus!
Ultimately, while I like this movie more than I don't like it, it kinda bums me out, which is unfortunate. And it's mostly because I think this is a really big missed opportunity. And it all ties to the major question of, have we rebooted or not? It felt pretty clear after Bumblebee that we'd started over, but now everything's thrown into question again. Have Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast split off from the other movies, or have they not? Lorenzo de Bonaventura, the lead producer behind all of these movies, seems to believe that these are prequels, which is what's really thrown everything for a loop. But since these ones are set so much farther before, they can kind of split the difference and not say anything conclusive. Rise of the Beast being set in 1994 doesn't necessarily have to even consider the events of the first movie in 2007. That's the logic they're running with right now. They can ride the line of being wishy-washy because none of this has to connect yet. But things most definitely don't line up in a great many ways. Not to mention how convoluted this timeline has to be for it to make some amount of sense. Because this now means the Autobots have to leave in order to come back during the events of the first movie. At the same time, given that Unicron is inside the Earth in the last night, that means here in Rise of the Beasts, Unicron would be eating himself. This obviously wouldn't be the first time the Transformers movies have had continuity issues, this just feels like we're reaching a breaking point. And it's worth noting that while discussions about continuity feel mostly baked into the more niche fan discussions, it still matters to a broader audience, just with different words. Instead of asking, is this one connected to the other ones, they'd ask, do I have to remember the other ones to get this one? And while the answer for Rise of the Beasts is no, they don't have to watch the previous ones to get this one, the lack of clarity on that front probably made people go, I kinda don't feel like revisiting the old ones, so I'll skip this one too. Which is disappointing because they had the perfect opportunity for a fresh start. To use some of the goodwill after Bumblebee and especially the 5-year break to just start over and do something completely different. I mean, if audiences can accept a new Batman or Spider-Man every few years, why can't they accept a new Transformers every few years? This is something they've been doing on TV for decades. Why can't the movies follow suit? To me, I think that would have been the perfect opportunity to get new fans on board. You don't need to know anything. This will go back to square one just like the first movie did in 2007. Instead, this is spiritually Transformers 7. Oh, we teased Unicron in The Last Night? Well, now we're really going to do Unicron. Oh, we've spent 6 movies following the Decepticons? Now we're going to switch gears and do the Maximals and Terracons because we've done everything we can with the Decepticons. Which is simply not true, they barely scratched the surface, but that's beside the point. Crazily enough, doing a full-on Beast Wars movie would have been a fresh start. I mean, Maximals, Predacons, time travel, the Golden Disc, the whole 9 yards. It could have been a solid launching point just like Beast Wars was in the 90s. But in trying to be a follow-up, they took a massive misstep. And an opportunity to bring people back, I think they alienated a bunch of them instead. Not to mention it was faced with stiff competition. I mean, it released the weekend after Across the Spider-Verse, and there was no way it was going to beat that. So I was left quite disappointed after Rise of the Beasts. It missed the mark in many ways, in terms of characterization, in terms of what it was adapting, and in terms of what it was missing. The movies have been without one rather significant element of Transformers since 2017, and I really felt its absence this time. So while my head was swirling with a million thoughts that I hadn't quite nailed after seeing this movie, there was one single idea at the center of it all that was clear from minute one. I miss Megatron. Transformers has of course had a number of different eras, and a number of different iterations across its lifespan. From G1 to the aligned continuity to the movies to the comics, there's so much. And everyone out there has a favorite part, something that sticks out to them as the best the franchise has to offer. So while interviewing the guests for this video, I decided to ask them that important question. What is your favorite part of Transformers?
You put a gun to my head, I'm probably going to come down like on the side of Beast Wars. Like, I credit Beast Wars with being the thing that got me back into Transformers in the 90s, because Beast Wars was just that good in terms of its character writing and its storytelling. It was, part of the 90s renaissance of TV children's animation, where suddenly we could have real character arcs and real interconnected arced storytelling that spread out across a season and into the next season.
I think the Rise of the Beast video made me love Beast Wars even more. I think I grew a new appreciation for it. I think it became my favorite Transformers show because of that.
Beast Wars is my favorite show of all time, for nostalgic reasons, because it's goofy and wacky.
Once you get over how it looks, it's like so good and so fun and so silly. Like, you get so invested in it and these characters, and they act like people. Like, they don't act like cartoon characters to me. They act like in a way that feels real.
A lot of love for Beast Wars here, the show that revitalized the franchise in the 90s and led way to practically everything we've gotten since. But don't fret, there are plenty of other aspects of the franchise that got some love too.
I think my favorite Transformers story is More Than Meets the Eye by James Roberts. It is such a thought-provoking comic. It's so memorable. The characters are so strong. It's an ensemble of like 15 different guys, but they're all so distinct from each other. They all click together so well. I think Transformers More Than Meets the Eye is like genre-defining, franchise-defining. I think it is the best Transformers story that's ever told, even if it does definitely lose steam by the end and introduces maybe too many characters when it should be winding down. More Than Meets the Eye is outstanding.
I'm gonna have to say the movies. Man, I love those movies. I really love those movies, no matter their quality. I think the movies are my favorite part of the franchise. I'm gonna enjoy them because I can put on any Transformers movie and I can find enjoyment in it. I love the Transformers movies. I think that's my favorite part of the franchise.
100% the games. It just has the best designs for the characters, in my opinion. Like, the Bumblebee design is so good. It just looks sleek, modern. Like, Optimus Prime looks amazing in both games, in my opinion. Grimlock. There's no better version of that Grimlock out there. Soundwave, amazing. And even the characterization of the characters is so good.
The video games especially is my consistent favorite part because I can still play those games to this day.
In terms of my personal childhood favorite, Transformers Animated. The mystery of this unresolved 4th season. The fact that we know information about what storylines were going to happen just planted a seed in my brain that I was never able to get rid of.
Certainly Animated is up there. A lot of what IDW I would rate very highly as well. I think in terms of what am I likely to watch again or read again, and what am I less likely to? You know, Beast Wars and Machines, Prime, Cybertron, Cyberverse, funnily enough. Rescue Bot's another one I'd definitely go back and rewatch. There's just so much of it, it's hard to find the time.
Because I do a lot of live streams on those games, and people are just always great in the chat. You know, if they see me playing, they'll hop on as well, and then we have a big match. It's just fun. That's my favorite part of Transformers, is being constantly engaged with fans who just love the same thing as I do.
I personally enjoy a great many parts of Transformers. I think the first Michael Bay movie will forever be special to me. I think Transformers Prime will forever be special to me. But in thinking about it more, one aspect of Transformers that gets me the most excited is Fall of Cybertron. It landed at the exact right time. I was 12 years old when that game came out. I was paying attention to all of the marketing, trying to follow along as best as I could. I played the demo not because I needed to get my hands on it to see if I liked it, but because I needed it to tide me over until the full game finally came out. And the number of characters in there, from Optimus to Grimlock to Megatron to Ironhide, who I failed to mention in the previous videos, I mean, it is one of the biggest stories Transformers has had to tell, with a great expansion into different corners of Cybertron, which I think is one of, if not the single coolest location in fiction. It's just a great time. It's only a shame that the multiplayer servers are offline and you can't purchase the game legally anymore. It's cut off from a huge number of people, which I think is an absolute disservice. But in spite of that, Fall of Cybertron is at this point in time probably my favorite part of Transformers. Although ask me again tomorrow, I might give you a completely different answer. With Rise of the Beast now out in theaters and fans responding to it in their own way, the time eventually came to return to Transformers on TV, because the third and final batch of EARTHSPARK's first season was about to be released on Paramount Plus in July of 2023, with the episodes airing on Nickelodeon starting in, let me see here, right, April of 2024. So, like a whole year from now, essentially. At this point, I'm not even going to try and reason with the release schedule. It was now July 28th, 2023, and 8 new EARTHSPARK episodes were on Paramount Plus for fans to dive into and enjoy. And this time, Jawbreaker finally gets in alt mode. After all the humming and hawing in the last batch, he manages to take on the form of a Stygimoloch, a dinosaur, which is helped along in part by Grimlock, who in an inspired casting decision is voiced by Keith David. From there, the show does continue mostly with its slice-of-life aspects and the idea that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, with focus especially drawn to Starscream in one major episode. It's also getting a fair amount bigger and tying things back to the long-standing backstory of the franchise. For one thing, we get glimpses of Optimus's past, revealing he was once Orion Pax before being gifted the Matrix to become Optimus Prime. And we see the original 13 Primes at one point, alongside each of their special artifacts. It's hard to nail down all of them, but I believe we're seeing things like the Star Saber, the Enigma of Combination, the Requiem Blaster, and of course Quintus Prime's Ember Stone, the artifact that led to the creation of the Terrans in the first place. We even get a full appearance by Quintus Prime, voiced here by Clancy Brown, which is pretty significant. At the same time, Robbie and Moe's cyber sleeves begin to take on new characteristics. In particular, Robbie's is able to create a shield, and Moe's is able to create a sword. So while they're still human, they do manage to join the fight and help their fellow Terrans defeat the bad guys. But the big thing for the season is that the machinations of Ghost finally come falling down. Mandroid finally gets a handle on his Cybertronian appendages, but after a while he only becomes further corrupted by his hatred, and he eventually emerges with this giant crab spider robot body thing. And all that's left of the original guy is a head swimming around inside, which is quite the image. He's got 2 Sharkticons by his side, Blitzwave and Razorfin. He manages to kill Agent Croft in a rather brutal way, at least brutal for a show like this, and he's able to use the Ghost badges on all of the Autobots and Megatron to control them and pit them against our remaining heroes. So it's ultimately up to the Terrans and Bumblebee to save the world and stop Mandroid once and for all. And in a big move, even the Decepticons show up, including Starscream, to help save the day. It's a pretty big finale that, while not flawless, does bring things to a relatively satisfying close. And through the power of family, and also Quintus Prime, Robbie and Mo are able to save the day, defeating Mandroid and ending his control over the other Autobots, thus bringing the entire season to an end. And it's alright. I did notice a bit of a dip in quality during this last batch. Some of the animation is slower than it was before, the writing's a bit weaker with some weird cliffhangers at points, and it doesn't seem to quite have the same spark that was present in earlier episodes. But I think I also came to a larger realization regarding the entire show so far, something that I had kind of been feeling since starting the first episode. And it's that, for the first time in this franchise, I feel like this show isn't for me. Now, that was bound to happen eventually, but it was something I had to grapple with a little bit as this season continued. You know, obviously this is a kids show and the target audience I'm sure is having an absolute blast. I know many people in the fanbase were having a great time with it at this point. But at 25 years old, it doesn't quite hit like some of these shows did when I was a kid, which makes perfect sense, but it was that moment of, oh, I'm probably too old for this. So I came out of the first season enjoying it for the most part, but mostly refraining from the conversation. It was an alright, fun time, and we'll see how things continue from here. EARTHSPARK did get a video game though, titled EARTHSPARK Expedition, which, like a lot of recent Transformers games, isn't gonna land in the AAA category. But until we get Reactivate, this is the kind of stuff we're in for in the gaming sphere. Unless, of course, you're still playing Fortnite, because the Transformers collaboration managed to continue in October with 3 new skins. On top of Prime and Primal, you could now head into battle as Megatron, Bumblebee, and the Battle Bus itself, which was designed as an all-new Transformers character. Now there are more characters that can hit the gritty and do various Fortnite dances, though still the most amusing one to me is Optimus Prime. I mean, that guy doing these dances is crazy, even the ones that have been added in the years since his introduction. That's that me espresso. But while things like Fortnite and EARTHSPARK were courting the more fun side of the franchise, especially appealing to younger fans, there was one new corner of the franchise that was set to be significantly darker. Since its inception, Transformers has been in 3 major places. It's obviously been on toy shelves and on television, but it's also been in the comics. Transformers comics have been a mainstay since the franchise began, starting with the original Marvel comic in the 80s, followed by Generation 2 in the 90s, the Dreamwave era in the early 2000s, and finally the IDW era, which managed to run from 2005 all the way to 2022, creating an absolute mountain of stories, some of which are hailed as some of the greatest stories in Transformers history. But in 2022, it was announced that after 17 years, IDW would lose the license to Transformers comics. It took a couple months before it was revealed where it was going next, but eventually in 2023, Image Comics and their imprint SKYBOUND Entertainment released the first issue of their brand new Void Rivals run. And to the surprise of readers everywhere, Jetfire showed up. This had been rumored just barely before this comic was released, but outside of that, this was a total surprise. SKYBOUND and Image had just gotten the rights to Transformers comics and were beginning to create an all-new shared universe. Headed by Robert Kirkman, this would kick off the Energon universe, which included the Void Rivals comic, a Transformers comic, and a couple G.I. Joe runs. Now, while these would all occupy one space and cross over from time to time, the Transformers series itself would be able to stand on its own. This series would be helmed by Daniel Warren Johnson, and would take on a majorly G1-inspired look to tell new stories about the Autobots and Decepticons on Earth. And finally, on October 4th, 2023, this run began with issue number 1 finally hitting comic book stores across the world. This comic is without a doubt heavily inspired by Generation 1. For one thing, visually everything looks like the 80s cartoon, especially the designs, which are a near one-to-one match with what was in that show. But the setup is also very similar. The Ark, carrying some unconscious Autobots and Decepticons, has crash-landed on Earth. Now, through the power of Teletran, they've been awoken and have reignited the war between the two factions. Only this time, scarcity of energon is a real problem for both sides. So it's as much about trying to stop the enemy as it is about trying to find enough fuel to survive. Optimus Prime must lead the heroic Autobots, including Ratchet, Cliffjumper, Jazz, Wheeljack, and RC, to face off against the Decepticons, Starscream, Soundwave, Thundercracker, and Skywarp. But what makes this comic incredibly different from at least most of the G1 cartoon is that it's way darker. This is a war comic. This is about the horrors and devastation of these battles, and it's moving at lightning speed with near constant battles where characters will be injured, characters will fall apart, characters will even die. During the first issue, as soon as he wakes up, Starscream kills Bumblebee. The face of the franchise for the last 16 years is wiped off the board before he even has a chance to make a mark. That's the real statement this entire series is making. It's crazy. Starscream himself is an absolute menace here. He is frightening. He will kill anyone in his path. He even kinda kills Skywarp to use his parts to repair Teletran to fix up the rest of the Decepticons. And don't even get me started on what he does to humans. He literally squishes one into paste, and then in another moment he forces 2 pilots to eject from their plane, only to literally clap one out of the air. I mean, Starscream is taking no prisoners in this comic, let me tell you. There is a level of fun to the comic though, especially when it comes to the action, with Optimus routinely performing wrestling moves on some of the Decepticons. Jazz is constantly speaking in musical terms, which is a new way to play with that character. And then there's this one bit where you can see Cliffjumper flipping the Decepticons off as they escape from another encounter. The fun also comes in how this connects in small ways to the larger Energon universe. You know those 2 pilots I mentioned? One was murdered by Starscream, while the other managed to escape, and it's revealed his name is Duke. Duke from G.I. Joe, which directly sets up his own solo comic run. Meanwhile, Jetfire makes an appearance right at the start, which is directly set up by his appearance in Void Rivals, which was released just before this. But even with these connections to a larger Energon universe, this series is still able to stand entirely on its own, because it is telling its own story. In a different way than what Transformers has done previously, especially when you compare it to how the IDW comics started, which were primarily interested in laying the groundwork for a new, long-standing take on Transformers that did in fact last longer than any other continuity in the franchise's history.
Well, I've always approached Skybound with the thought that, knowing that it's made by Daniel Warren Johnson, an Eisner Award-winning writer who's not going to spend 7 or 8 years working on a licensed toy book. He's a guy who is like a rock star creator who is clearly here to tell a short 2-year story, and then he's going to go off and do something that's going to make him some money. He's not telling a story to begin a universe. That's how I've been describing it. He's not doing infiltration. He's not doing like Simon Furman did to lay down a brand new take, a total ground up rebuild of the Transformers universe. He's here to tell a cool Transformers story with guns and punching, and then he'll go away and do something else.
But if there had to be one single standout element to this comic so far, it brings me a lot of pleasure to say that it's Optimus Prime. This comic absolutely gets Optimus. Even in this far darker type of story, he is a beacon of light, a beacon of optimism, even if he is in constant doubt of himself and his mission to leave Cybertron. One of his key moments comes at the start of the 2nd issue where he's basking in the views of Mother Nature, in the beauty this planet has to offer, until suddenly he steps on a deer. And it becomes this horrifying moment for him, this moment of realization that he is so much bigger and so much stronger than the creatures of this planet, and takes that as a real lesson that he has a responsibility to protect life on Earth. It gives context to Optimus's first experiences on Earth that I really don't think we've ever gotten before, and it's even added to when he says, "Where I am from, everything is metal. The ground doesn't sway when I walk. I don't leave marks where my feet tread." There come some moments where even the other Autobots are beginning to question if humans should be protected, largely because of how flawed they're revealed to be. But Optimus believes practically from the moment they arrive that humanity deserves protection. Humans aren't so different from them, after all. It even gets to a point where, after being told not to use the Matrix to help the downed Autobots be brought back to their feet, out of fear it might drain Optimus too greatly, he eventually decides with no second thought to use its power to help one of his newfound human friends. No more death. That's what he says. No more death. They get it, man. That's Optimus Prime.
I think he's really cool. I like how miserable he is without them making him, like, you know, evil or rude or anything. It's like Superman where, you know, he's like faced with all these terrible things, but he still remains like optimistic and positive and kind.
And he gets some sick as hell action moments, like the wrestling moments from earlier, but there's also a bit where his arm is completely trashed during a battle with Skywarp, and instead of trying to protect what's left, he literally tears it off his body and uses it as a cudgel. Insane. But it also leads into the setup of one of the most ingenious images in Transformers history. One that in hindsight is kind of shocking that it's never been brought up before. Because after Optimus loses his arm, Ratchet brings out something from storage as a replacement. Something they're all reluctant to take on. But what could it be? What could be so terrible? Well, for the foreseeable future, Optimus is now going around with Megatron's arm. It's so cool how this instantly became an iconic image, with many photoshops coming after of the various Optimus and Megatron combinations you could make across the franchise's history. It just stuck out from minute one. And with this added weaponry, Optimus gets to have a bunch of new, cool moments, like during the 6th issue of the comic, which sees the Autobots face off against Devastator. Optimus is given some sick-as-hell moments to take the Combiner down one-on-one, complete with one panel where he's charging towards Devastator, and baked into the motion lines around him reads, "You know the song." There are so many moments to gush about in this comic, but that one really sticks out, because every Transformers fan does know the song. And this particular thing works so much better than just saying, "You've got the touch," because that would be tacky. But doing this fourth wall break in the background of this panel, that's cool stuff right there. Overall, these initial 6 issues instantly created one of the best iterations of Optimus Prime. Someone who, despite his own self-doubt, is such an inspiration to others that a human who previously didn't trust him at all decided to sacrifice himself to bring Optimus back to full capacity. And with his efforts, Starscream and the Constructicons are defeated. But of course, they'll be back for the next issues as the story will continue in due time. These first 6 issues, while a smaller chapter of a larger story, really do feel like one rather contained adventure that builds to a major climax. The introduction to these characters, the dawn of their war on Earth, culminating in a massive fight against Devastator. But even still, there's plenty more for this series to offer, because we also see, off in the Arctic, Megatron rests partially submerged in the ice. Very much so inspired by the first movie, and if that's not an ominous image of the inevitable future, I don't know what is. 2024 marks one of the biggest milestones in Transformers history, because this right here is the 40th anniversary. 40 years ago, the very first Transformers toy hit shelves, the very first comic hit newsstands, and the very first episode of the cartoon aired on television. From there, the franchise has continued to evolve and explode in a number of ways. It has nearly died, it's been the biggest thing in the world, and while we might not be at the absolute peak of popularity, we're not doing half bad. Practically everything about 2024 was a celebration of the franchise's long-standing history. There were some new toys made as part of the celebration, namely a 40th anniversary G1 Optimus Prime reissue. That original toy was brought forward, modernized slightly, and returned to toy shelves for the new generation of fans and collectors. At the same time, in May of 2024, fans were able to watch the first 4 episodes of the G1 cartoon in movie theaters. That's right, the More Than Meets the Eye 3-parter alongside Transport to Oblivion were all screened in theaters across the world, as well as a script reading for the first episode by a number of the original cast members, including Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, Greg Berger, and others, who all read through the first episode script which was synced to the presentation on screen. So for those interested enough to head out to theaters for a couple episodes of a 40-year-old cartoon, this was the place to be. But as much as the 40th anniversary was about celebrating the history of the franchise, particularly how it began, there was also one major event this year that was going to bring things into the future. One major new event that was going to celebrate this franchise for new and old fans alike. Transformers 1. The next big screen adventure for the Transformers was fast approaching, though it had been delayed slightly. While it was initially set for July 19th, 2024, it was eventually pushed back to September 13th, 2024, marking the first September release for a Transformers movie. But that just brought it closer to the 40th anniversary of the cartoon, which began on September 17th, 1984. Now, there was a lot of trepidation at this point. The cast announcement from 2023 was still hanging over the fanbase like a shadow. While many were hopeful and optimistic about how it would turn out, others were worried. Not to mention questionable plot leaks that seemed to not paint the story in the best light. There was a lot to be concerned about. I myself was not all that pumped at this point for what Transformers 1 was set to be. The cast announcement really did take the wind out of my sails. Not to mention it hadn't been that long since Rise of the Beast, so it wasn't like I was particularly starving for a new Transformers movie, even if I was starving for one I'd like without caveat. But something about it at this point in the game was making me particularly really worried. I had wanted a Cybertron movie for a long time, but what if they mess it up? That would be devastating. Weirdly enough, I almost didn't want it to follow in the exact footsteps of the Cybertron games. As much as I think those are awesome, for some reason if this was a close adaptation, it wouldn't have felt right. So in the lead up to the inevitable first trailer, I was bracing for impact. I was bracing to be a real big grump and not really be on board with what they were doing, and I was bracing for it to be a me problem and not the movie's problem. As the months went by, small tidbits became revealed about the movie, mainly details from the cast on how they were planning to portray their characters and even praise for how the movie looked. And eventually, in April of 2024, things really started to heat up as Transformers headed for CinemaCon in Las Vegas once again, where they showed off new footage to attendees only. But at the very least, descriptions made it out, including some that hinted at the visuals, with some saying it looked like the Cybertron game's CG trailers, and others saying it looked like Spider-Verse, which, I don't know how to tell you this, but those are two different things. But it wouldn't be long before fans at large got to see a glimpse of the movie for themselves, because on April 18th, 2024, this became the very first trailer to be unveiled in space. That's not a joke, by the way. They attached a screen and a camera to a small craft that elevated into space, all on a live stream for fans to watch in anticipation. And finally, once it reached 125,000 feet in elevation, the very first trailer for Transformers 1 made its grand debut.
So, how long do you think we'll be here? I'm not talking to you.
You know what? We are so screwed!
Thought you weren't talking to me.
Right off the bat, the tone of this trailer is completely different than what I expected. I really should have seen it coming that this would be a fun, lighthearted kids movie in the vein of something from Pixar, since it's being directed by a guy who made a Pixar movie. It's bright, it's colorful, and it shows Cybertron in an entirely new way that we've never seen before. Our main characters are apparently worker bots who can't transform, who wind up going on a mission to the surface, which is forbidden to most. And upon encountering Alpha Trion, they finally gain the ability to transform and lock in for the next stage of the adventure, the details of which we still don't quite know. But it centers on the tease of the future all Transformers fans know, a war between Optimus Prime and Megatron. For now, though, we'll be following their younger selves Orion Pax and D16, best friends working together on Cybertron, a dynamic that we don't get to see very often. Perhaps the most shocking element, though, is the humor. In fact, upon watching this trailer for the first time, you could be convinced that this is a comedy, especially when it comes to Bumblebee, or as he's known here, B-127.
I'm actually working on some nicknames. The one I'm floating right now is Badassatron, which is actually pronounced Badassatron.
But even beyond the humor, there are hints towards a grander story at play. I mean, we got Quintessons, we got this Tiger Bot who was eventually revealed to be Alpha Trion, we got Arachnid, and at the end there's a grand 30-second montage of action featuring the real money shot of the trailer, Elita 1 kicking ass.
We've got these powers for a reason. Let's use them.
Not only is she taking down that one bad guy, but she's doing it while rotating her entire body. Like, she transforms, kicks the guy, then rotates her entire bottom half to kick him again, and then effortlessly kicks his gun into her hands to shoot another guy. That's good stuff right there. After months of grumbling and preparing for the worst, once I saw just how different this movie was from what I expected, I was 100% on board. It was like, oh, they're going over there? That sounds fun.
I was pretty on board with what I was watching and what I was seeing. This is not what I expected in terms of tone, but I don't think anyone expected the tone, because when they think War for Cybertron, they're either thinking two things. It's either Behind Moon Studios video games, or they're thinking a Bumblebee movie.
The trailer was fun. It was good. I liked it, but it wasn't perfect. For me, when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was totally on board because of the Transformers movie coming out. It was new. It was fresh. It felt fresh. It felt like something we have not gotten before. This is something completely new, and I was really on board for it.
When I first watched it, yeah, I was a little taken aback by it, because it advertised the film like a perfectly normal kids animated film. But it did take me back, because I was viewing it as a Transformers fan, and it's not what I expected from a Transformers trailer.
The trailer was very strange. It was definitely an odd way to market it.
But while a great many people also thought this was a fun trailer, there were many others who were not as on board.
I mean, I thought visually it looked like really good. I just thought, like, I had faith in them. I was like, because I'd been hearing about it, I was like, well, maybe, you know, they'll pull through. But I was like, this trailer just is shit. Like,
after that first trailer, I was really, really worried. I think the voice cast is fine now. I'm a little, eased on that. But just from what I saw, I thought, man, I'll go see it, but I'm not in a good headspace for it.
The humor was off-putting, even cringe. The tone of a comedy was not what they had in mind whatsoever. Especially considering Transformers on the big screen has mostly been about the big doomsday events and apocalypse scenarios. So coming out of this, there was an online stink around the trailer. But as is a good lesson to learn, you can never tell if internet noise actually translates to real-world motion. And so many fans were able to look at it differently after a minute and kind of consider what the movie might wind up being.
The day that trailer came out, the director Josh Cooley had done some interview where he was like, the trailer doesn't necessarily accurately reflect the tone of the film. And I was like, okay, I feel like the director wouldn't say that if that weren't true. Like, that actually made me a lot more confident in the potential of the project.
I sat with it for a little bit. I thought about it. And I think it was after that I tweeted that it was surprising that such a normal, safe kind of trailer, a trailer that was so in the mold of a normal, good, standard, kids animated film, felt so unusual for Transformers. And I was like, why does that feel weird? And I'm not sure I've ever really come up with an answer.
Ultimately, I think the truth of the situation is, this trailer is built for kids and families. If they saw this playing in theaters or found it online, they might be like, that looks fun for the whole family, let's go see it in September. And I think for a franchise like this, one built around toys, that's not a bad place to aim when trying to get a new generation of fans.
B, these are not the bad guys.
Why did you cut the door?
What? No, it was already like that. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
It was. Yeah, it was already like. Yeah, that's right.
This even confirmed that Steve Buscemi was going to be part of the cast, joining to voice Starscream, which is pretty exciting. Now, the movie was delayed slightly with the release of this trailer, going from September 13th to September 20th in order to avoid too much competition with the upcoming Beetlejuice sequel, but it was still enough for fans to mark their calendars. I mean, this was going to be the first time since 1986 that there was a new theatrical animated Transformers movie. After years of live-action movies, this was in many ways a welcome change of pace. But of course, if you wanted something to tide you over before Transformers 1 hits theaters, you can return to TV screens because after a year off the air, EARTHSPARK was back for its second season. Though there was a slight change-up behind the scenes. The first season was animated by Icon Creative Studio, which is based in Vancouver, but after apparent stress behind the scenes to get the episodes done, production on Season 2 turned to 88 Pictures, which is based in India. While the character models would all look the same, the animation team behind the scenes was brand new. And once again, the release schedule was damn near incomprehensible, because while Paramount Plus would get 10 new episodes right up front in June, Nickelodeon would only start getting them at the end of September, running weekly for the following couple months. I mean, why even bother trying to keep up with Nickelodeon's release schedule? It's almost like they're trying to kill off the show. But in any event, fans of EARTHSPARK inevitably returned to Paramount Plus on June 7, 2024 for a batch of 10 all-new episodes. It was now time for Season 2. It has been 1 year since the events of EARTHSPARK Season 1, and our main characters, Robbie and Mo, have grown up a bit. They even have all new power suits that grow like nanotech from their cyber sleeves. At the end of last season, apparently the Ember Stone was broken into fragments, and this season mostly revolves around the hunt to retrieve the shards and reassemble them, which is very similar to the setup for Transformers Animated second season. These shards even start waking up new Transformers, as we're introduced to two new Chaos Terrans, as they're called, Aftermath and Spitfire, the latter of whom is a 1-to-1 match with Twitch, just better in a lot of ways under the hood. There are some advancements to our slice of life kind of stories, like hashtag getting yourself a new alt mode after Ghost is permanently shut down. We introduce Cosmos, who in a fun turn is voiced by Weird Al Yankovic, who also voiced Wreck-Gar in Transformers Animated Season 2. Is time a flat circle?
I am Wreck-Gar! I dare to be stupid!
There's a lot of expansion into the backstory and mythos to Transformers here, as we explore a great deal about the history of Quintus Prime. We reveal that he once traveled the universe creating life on various worlds out in the stars, including the Quintessons. We even meet a Quintesson executioner to confirm this. Until eventually, Quintus decided to safeguard the Ember Stone on Earth with the very first Terran, Terratronus, a titan who lives underneath the town of Witwicky. There are some big ideas going on here, some interesting things to follow, but in unfortunate news, this season is a significant step down from Season 1. The big thing is, everything feels cheaper, in large part because the animation is quite a bit worse. Now, I don't want to throw too much shade to 88 Pictures, who I'm sure are doing their best, but it does feel like they've been given considerably fewer resources than Icon Creative Studio. Now, it's not uncommon for a Transformers show to degrade in animation quality as it goes. That happens practically every time, but the stark contrast between some moments in Season 1 and some moments here is quite startling. The worst stuff has to be in the episode The Butterfly Effect, which centers on a villain named Fair Maestro, who is a maestro who works at the fair. On top of the fact that this episode is mostly boring, it also features some weird gags that I honestly never really could have predicted.
Surrender, thieves! You won't get away with this!
Like, why did he do that? Why did he smack that random guy? Why did they animate that? What is happening? The cheapness also carries over to the voice actors. Now, while Alan Tudyk, Rory McCann, and Danny Pudi are still here as Optimus, Megatron, and Bumblebee, they're here way less. The backbone of the Optimus-Megatron dynamic is almost completely dropped. They're just kinda hanging out now. And other characters like Grimlock don't even speak at all. Neither does Agent Schloter. I mean, it's Schloter, guys. One of the best characters from Season 1. He appears briefly here, but never speaks. All because they don't want to pay Mark Evan Jackson, I guess. The most surprising downer, though, is the writing. Apparently, at the end of Season 1, a bunch of the lead writing staff left the show, and a bunch of new writers took their place, which might even explain why some episodes towards the end of Season 1 felt a little rough. But it also results in a show that's doing different things than what it set up. The idea of looking beyond the cover and knowing there's more to these characters than meets the eye is almost completely dropped. The idea of Starscream being this tortured soul who can learn to do good is lost entirely as he becomes the season's main villain. He's a cartoon villain now, with a batch of evil Decepticons who have no chance of learning to be better. And it's worse for the Chaos Terrans, who are both written and talked about like they are purely the incarnation of evil. They do bad things because they're Chaos Terrans, which sounds racist.
It's almost like the main point, the main symbolism of Season 1 was completely lost. You were working through that whole first season to overcome the biases that were being shot at you. And now in the second season, you're just acting like these Chaos Terrans are genetically predetermined to be evil. But it's such a shocking, jarring tonal disconnect mixed up with really downgraded animation.
The only real silver lining is that Starscream gets a moment to be a horror movie villain. Until, of course, Starscream actually murders the Chaos Terrans. Both Aftermath and Spitfire are killed as a result, so rest in peace them, I guess. Now, the weird thing is some of this stuff I think could work very well in any other show. I mean, there's conflict you can mine here, especially from an evil twin dynamic like Twitch and Spitfire have. But it's not what this show was doing. So fans of EARTHSPARK's first season are just left scratching their heads wondering what happened. Why did this show stop doing the things I liked? While there is a climactic final moment where Starscream awakens Terratronus, it doesn't feel right for a show like this, which was more built around a smaller scale family dynamic.
It's like a generational fall off. It's like, I don't think anything like that has ever happened in the franchise before. It's like, it's crazy how bad it got.
The dip in quality was very noticeable. It really, really, really was. And I think everyone noticed it, and everyone did not like it. The writing quality was worse. The animation quality was worse. I really tried to have fun with Season 2, but there's a lot of episodes that genuinely were so bad, it made me just turn off the whole show.
I don't think that it's as drastic a visual dip as a lot of people are making out. It is apparent. I went to see the 40th anniversary screening of the first couple of episodes of the G1 cartoon in the cinema, and before that there was a clip of Season 2 of EARTHSPARK, and I did watch the clip and I thought, it's because I'm watching this on a cinema screen that the flaws of it are apparent in a way I didn't notice on the small screen. And then the season came out and I was like, oh, no, that's because they've changed animation houses.
The animation was different, which I give credit to any person who works in animation. It's hard. And apparently Season 1's animation was super hard to work out. It was like complex to deal with. You know, I was anticipating Season 2 to go much bigger, and unfortunately it just kind of backpedaled a little bit.
I'm genuinely not sure if there is a Transformers cartoon that has so appreciably, so visibly, so tangibly, that is so universally agreed upon to have fallen off, sadly, to the extent that Spark did between Seasons 1 and 2, which sucks, frankly.
Ultimately, everything ends with Starscream's defeat and Terratronus apparently being sent into some kind of sleep mode underneath an enormous dome created by Robbie and Mo, the power of which managed to destroy what was left of the Ember Stone, so things are in rougher shape heading into the next batch of episodes. One can only hope the next batch can pull through with something, and maybe bring back what people enjoyed about Season 1. But of course, EARTHSPARK is not the only thing going on in the Transformers universe, as the SKYBOUND comics were still hitting comic book stores every month. With the first arc concluded with issue number 6, the story continued in issues 7 through 12, wherein the darkness of this story continues to remain prevalent, this time seeing the inner turmoil present in both sides of the conflict. After suffering a significant defeat to the Autobots, the Decepticons go through a major shakeup. Soundwave usurps control from Starscream, becoming the new leader of the Decepticons, which you think might be absolutely fantastic for their future prospects, but things only continue to remain rocky as Shockwave enters the picture. Shockwave is of course the master strategist and cold as ice, with him visibly shown to torture Autobots slowly for his own ends, with one appearance from Ultra Magnus showing him a little worse for wear, to put it mildly. But while Shockwave speedruns the Decepticons' plan to use Earth's fuel to restore Cybertron, it begins to clash with Soundwave, whose first priority is actually to repair his pet Ravage. Yet Shockwave's eye is on the bigger prize, so dissension is beginning to fall within the Decepticon ranks. Not to say they're ineffective though. Shockwave's return begets the death of Ratchet, and the Decepticons' plan sees them open a space bridge portal, bringing Cybertron to Earth. Very similar to the Ultimate Doom 3-parter from G1 and of course, Dark of the Moon. At the very least, there are some fun new additions to the cast, with Astro Train making an appearance, Beachcomber shows up for a bit, becoming a major character, with his love of nature and the beauty of Earth brought front and center in a clever way. But by far the most impactful new addition is Elita 1, a warrior who kept up the good fight for the Autobots on Cybertron, but due to the circumstances of this story has found her way to Earth to rejoin Optimus Prime's efforts. But it's not necessarily something she's super pleased about, because despite all of these Autobots being on the same team, she believes that Optimus and his team abandoned Cybertron. They might have been searching the stars for another means of saving their home, but Elita believes the answer is on Cybertron itself, and that saving their home is worth any cost. Even though there is definitely some kind of connection between Optimus and Elita in this story, they have very clear ideological differences, and it comes to a head here when Optimus has to make one crucial choice in issue number 12. Because in order to save the Earth, Cybertron must be sent back through the portal to its own corner of space. But to do so might jeopardize Cybertron's future. It all leads to this haunting panel where Elita pleads with Optimus not to go through with this, to not abandon them again, until Optimus pulls the trigger and makes the sacrifice, saving Earth by dooming Cybertron. It's pretty big stuff for Optimus to deal with, a very hard choice to make.
I genuinely do think that the SKYBOUND comics are some of the best stories that we've had within the franchise. For me, SKYBOUND is the most well-rounded, mature Transformers story venture. A lot of people say, hey, it's really dark, it's way too edgy, characters are killed off left and right, and I understand those complaints. I've made a video on it, I've talked about it multiple times. While SKYBOUND does have some of those moments that are dark and are kind of hard to read, I feel it also has the most amount of heart that we've ever gotten out of a Transformers story.
And of course, it's not going to lead to a clean resolution, since a large piece of Cybertron has now fallen towards the Earth, and many Decepticons are still at large. Not to mention, Optimus is slowly beginning to lose himself in some ways. Because he's taken on Megatron's arm, there are moments where his judgment lapses, and it all builds to a moment where he's in a one-on-one confrontation with Shockwave, and he crushes Shockwave's head. That's brutal, let me tell you. And something Optimus is completely terrified of. Something clearly came over him, he says, and it's probably related to having a piece of Megatron fused to his body. So during its second arc, the SKYBOUND Transformers comics continue to go down this darker, more mature, more war-torn path, filled with death, violence, and high-stakes drama that this franchise hasn't attempted as much to this degree. And it continues to leave the story open for interesting paths heading into the future, with many consequences to iron out as the story continues into its third arc. But of course, as the months ticked by, the fanbase at large began turning their sights to the main event in the fall of 2024. Transformers was returning to the big screen with an animated movie, and the promotional cycle was beginning to heat up heading into the summer. As July got underway, the first clip was aired during the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, followed by the first TV spot. But all of that was just a prelude to the main event, as finally, Transformers 1 made an appearance at Comic-Con. The main cast, director, and producer Lorenzo de Bonaventura took to the stage to tease this upcoming movie, reveal some slight tidbits and details, and get both the attendees and the audience at home pumped up for this franchise's return to theaters. Which of course was all capped off with the release of the second full trailer.
For thousands of years, we have been at war. But before, we were enemies. We were like brothers.
You ready? Always ready. Let's punch in.
This trailer is a lot grander in scope than the first trailer. It in fact goes a lot deeper into the potentially darker aspects of the story. We see a lot of the same stuff like our main character's mission to the surface, getting T-Cogs from Alpha Trion, but then we start seeing glimpses of what comes after, with hints towards the downfall of D16 as he slowly but surely becomes Megatron. Now, you could argue that this is a pretty big spoiler, and sure, it would be nice to not have this many details revealed in the trailer, but at the same time, it's not like this is much of a surprise. We know Orion Pax will become Optimus Prime, and we know D16 will become Megatron. This is telling us that that's the movie we're in for, which is arguably a more accurate portrayal than the first trailer. with tons of big action moments to sell the bigger sequences the movie was promising, but also still with some glimpses at the humor.
It's not like he can transform.
Hey, Darkwing! Don't. My finger can transform. Guess which one? Allow me.
As someone who was on board after the first trailer, this was honestly just another step in the right direction for me. You know, it was bigger, it was grander, it showed off more of the stellar animation. I got to the end of this trailer and genuinely thought, are we gonna get a good Transformers movie? But in a truly terrible turn of events, other people got the answer to that question way before I did. Across the summer of 2024, Paramount held a large number of fan screenings before this movie's release, allowing people in certain locations to be able to go out and see this movie before anyone else. Obviously with the intention of garnering some word of mouth ahead of release. Clearly they think they have something and they want people talking about it before it comes out. Sixo, a prominent toy reviewer in the Transformers space, managed to see the movie all the way back in June. But 3 of the people I interviewed for this managed to see the movie at the end of July. Kian Carlisle saw the movie with Jobby the Hong in Los Angeles, while Commodant Cam and Paper Plane saw the movie in London. In fact, while the rest of us were watching and dissecting the second trailer the day it released, they were in the theater watching the movie. Don't you just hate to see other people live your dream? Ugh.
I think we were definitely within the first few groups to watch like a completed cut of the movie. I think we were like the first big fan screening.
We were first in line, like queuing to the early premiere. Thank God, because that queue got really long, really fast, and we got good seats. Fantastic. It was a great presentation, display, and all of it.
So they had a quiz before the movie. There was like 3 questions. Like as the questions got harder, the prizes got better. The first question was like, I don't know, what was Optimus Prime called before you know? And whoever answered that got like a t-shirt. And the best answer, like the third answer, the hardest question, was a tidal wave, like a huge legacy tidal wave. And the third question was, who voices Orion Pax in this movie? And some kid got the tidal wave, and I was so angry. I was livid into the movie, because the movie started like a minute later. I was livid into the movie starting. But it was okay.
It was one of the best experiences of my entire life, and I guess you could say career, because I didn't even think of it as a career thing, because I was surrounded by so many Transformers fans who got every reference, got every joke. When it got to the serious moments, everyone was like gasping and ahhing and like, ooh, you know. I just felt so lucky, just so honored to be able to go watch this, and just very fortunate to everyone who was involved in making that happen, because it was just like a treat.
As the summer continued and the September release of Transformers 1 approached, there were more details, more featurettes, a few new TV spots and advertisements, but there was a slightly different attitude among some fans, including myself, compared to the build-up to Rise of the Beasts. I can say that like a lot of people, I was paying pretty close attention to the promotion of Rise of the Beasts, but it ultimately proved to reveal too much of that movie's story.
I spoiled myself too much for Rise of the Beast. I paid attention to too many leaks, I watched too many trailers, I watched too many clips, and I kind of knew a lot of the movie before going in.
So this time, people like myself were measuring their intake of trailers and TV spots. We didn't want to see it all, so we just got what we needed and went in hoping that the movie would provide us with a ton of surprises. But things would prove pretty difficult for at least the UK audience ready to see this movie, as they weren't going to get it until October 11th. A full 3 weeks after its release in North America. That surely put a damper on their excitement, as a great many people would now have to avoid spoilers for weeks before they'd even get a chance to see the movie. The release schedule and rollout, no pun intended, of this movie was going to probably hit it a little hard, with pirate links and other methods surely flying fast and loud before many countries got the movie officially. But in North America, which is where I am, the movie was still heading strong towards its September 20th release. Just a little bit longer and the movie was going to hit theaters. Not to mention, the continued celebration of the franchise's 40th anniversary was reaching a fever pitch. As we approached the anniversary of the G1 cartoon, more and more celebrations were held among the fandom, which was all capped off with a special 3-minute video released on September 12th. A celebration of all of Transformers history animated by Studio Trigger. They of course were a Japanese animation studio who had made plenty of renowned projects in Japan and had even reached North American audiences with a couple episodes of Star Wars Visions as well as Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Now, they took the entire Transformers franchise and distilled it into one 3-minute showcase, shining a spotlight onto practically every era in its history, with nearly every character in one place interacting in these brief vignettes. From the most iconic and recognizable corners of the franchise, like G1, Beast Wars, the movies, all the way to some of the most obscure corners of the franchise, and even the most reviled. Like Ironhide from Transformers Energon makes a brief appearance. Not only has Energon been widely regarded as the worst Transformers show, but Ironhide and the human character Kicker were well regarded as the worst parts of it. And yet here they both are, getting a brief spotlight as part of this franchise's history. You love to see it. No matter what part of the franchise you like most, everything gets a brief moment in here, which is fitting for a 40th anniversary special. The only major criticism of it is that this wasn't a full show. People really love Studio Trigger's work, and I'm sure they'd be first in line if they ever made a full-fledged Transformers show sometime in the future. And if this is any indication, it'd be pretty neat. For right now, though, we'll have to settle for just 3 minutes. But of course, all eyes were turning towards the next major event as Transformers 1 was right around the corner. September 20th was fast approaching. The next foray onto the big screen was coming right up. Just a few more days left until we all get to see it for ourselves. Although you could perhaps see it just a slight bit early because there was one last early screening. You might remember that Transformers 1 was, for a time, set to release on September 13th. 1 week ahead of its current date before it got delayed. Well, for some, they'd still get to see it that weekend. Because in North America, on Saturday, September 14th, a whole bunch of theaters had just one evening showing for Transformers 1 at 5 p.m. It didn't matter what time zone you were in, the movie was starting at 5 p.m. ish after commercials and trailers. Now, you still had to pay full price to get in like any other movie, but I had heard about this a couple days before and I decided that I was going to be there. So I did get to live the dream ever so slightly. I didn't see it as early as some people did, but I still caught it ahead of its wider release. So while most were waiting until September 20th, I was there 1 week early. The clock turned to September 14th, 2024, where after months of anticipation, I was ready and waiting to witness the first brand new animated Transformers movie in 38 years. The surprises in this movie start coming in minute 1, because right off the bat we get a whole backstory about the original 13 Primes. There's no beating around the bush, there's no leaving this for some time later. This is set up in the first minutes of the movie. The 13 Primes were once the leaders of Cybertron who carried the Matrix of leadership, until a battle with the Quintessons destroyed them all and the Matrix vanished. As a result, Energon no longer flows across the planet. Now, Sentinel Prime is the leader, with Arachnid as his trusty lieutenant, searching for the lost Matrix to restore the flow of Energon. Until then, Cybertronian society has been broken up into 2 sections. You have your cogged bots, who are your more privileged citizens who can transform, and the cogless bots, who are relegated to below-the-surface mining jobs to get Energon for everyone else, without the ability to transform. Orion Pax is one of these miners, who yearns to do something more. He knows in his heart of hearts that there's a better future for Cybertron and for his fellow mining brethren, which is why he's here at all, listening to this historical document. He's trying to find the Matrix. He wants to help out, even if his decisions are rash and rather reckless. Now, this is a lot of information, and certainly the movie throws a lot at you in the opening couple scenes, but it also puts you at ease during the first major joke. Because Orion is caught in the midst of listening to this historical log, and upon his first instinct, this is how he tries to escape.
It's not like you can transform.
Oh yeah? Well, watch this.
Get him!
Not only is this a bit that highlights the faster, more energetic animation style, it's also a joke you can only do with Transformers. It's unique to these robots. So at this moment, I and many others thought, yeah, this is gonna be fun. Now, Orion Pax is only one of a great many miners on Cybertron, because he's also got his best friend D16. The two of them are inseparable, but what's interesting is that they're almost constantly disagreeing. Orion is the reckless rule breaker trying to find the Matrix to make things better, and D16 is the steadfast rule follower. He believes his best life can be lived if he plays by the rules and rises through the ranks as the best miner in town. Orion is actively sabotaging that in many ways, getting himself into trouble, and D16 constantly feels like he's gotta save his friend from getting put in prison or getting himself fired or something. Not to mention, he's a super fan of the Primes, particularly Megatronus Prime, the strongest of them all, and that extends to an immense amount of love for Sentinel, the current leader. But even with those disagreements, those fundamental character differences, they are still the best of friends. Orion knows exactly what makes D tick, even giving him a limited edition Megatronus Prime sticker, which is fun.
Thanks. Always got your back. No matter what.
Their relationship, their dynamic is the entire driving force behind the movie. You know, it's all about them and how they annoy the hell out of each other, or how Orion will get D to do more insane things as the movie goes, like dropping them into the middle of the massive Iacon 5000 race.
Crazy! Sure feels like it.
But by far the craziest stunt that Orion decides to pull off is going to the surface of Cybertron, the abandoned area that's been blocked off from the citizens of Iacon. But he believes the Matrix may be up there, they may have its location, and there's no better time to act than now. Orion and D16 aren't alone though, because this also ropes in the comedic relief character for the movie B-127 and the tough-as-nails mining captain Alita 1, who was actually their boss and hates all of their guts, which creates a fun dynamic.
It's okay, I was wrong about that. It was going the other way.
Despite the fact that the surface is abandoned, however, it is one of the most stunning sights in the entire movie. For a movie that's moving pretty quick, it does take a moment to bask in the scale and beauty of the world of Cybertron. Everything about this movie looks fantastic, from the characters to the way they move to the environments that they inhabit. I mean, the city of Iacon is stunning the whole way through. And the growing highways that generate mere inches in front of cars? That's cool stuff right there. Which follows along from the conceit of the War for Cybertron games that the Transformer homeworld is, itself, constantly transforming. But as fun as this adventure is to begin with, this lighthearted quest to journey to the surface and find the Matrix, things very quickly take a turn into darker territory. Because our four main characters find the last surviving member of the Primes, Alpha Trion, who reveals the shocking truth. Sentinel Prime is a traitor.
A deal had to be made with Megatron.
No, sorry, wrong movie. Sentinel Prime is a traitor again.
Our victory was near. Until we were betrayed.
During the Quintesson War, Sentinel struck a deal with the enemy to trap and destroy the original 13 Primes, also that he could have control over Cybertron, to live like a king, as he says. But as a result of the Primes falling, the Matrix vanished into the ether, never to be seen again, creating the loss of Energon. In order to counteract this, Sentinel plucked the cogs from the newborn Transformers before they came online and forced them into servitude.
We were born with transformation cogs, but he took them from us.
The entire world our characters knew was in fact a lie. Now, this isn't the most unpredictable twist ever. I mean, it's happened before in these movies to some extent. Not to mention how often Sentinel is characterized as a huge dick, but the impacts that it has on the story and how it proceeds from here is what makes it a bit surprising. Because in a lot of ways, the structure of this movie is actually the opposite of the structure for every live-action Transformers movie before this. The 5 Michael Bay movies, and Rise of the Beast to some extent, all kind of start off with some sort of conspiracy. There's a mystery the characters are solving throughout the movie. Dark of the Moon leans the most in this direction with the whole "we gotta figure out what's going on the moon" thing, before eventually the premise is revealed to center around an artifact of some kind, a MacGuffin that everyone's chasing. The secret of the moon is that the Decepticons are protecting the pillars. Now they're gonna use them to enslave the Earth and rebuild Cybertron. The conspiracy aspect eventually goes away and it just becomes about getting the thing. Transformers 1 is the inverse. It starts with the hunt for an artifact, the quest for the matrix of leadership, but once the truth behind Sentinel is revealed, the story becomes about unraveling his conspiracy to take him down. The hunt for the Matrix is kind of forgotten about for a bit. Now, it's all about Sentinel. Alpha Trion grants our heroes the powers that were stolen from them, using some of the cogs from the fallen primes to give our heroes the ability to transform. And one thing that I think is awesome about this movie is that it turns transformation into a superpower. It's a wonder no one's really thought about this before. I mean, not only do we live in an era of superhero movies and superhero stories, not to mention the number of Transformers that have had superpowers in the past, but the idea that the simple act of reshaping their bodies into cars, trucks, tanks, planes, whatever, is a superpower in and of itself is something we haven't seen before. At least not like this. And suddenly, these guys are doing insane things. I mean, you see it right off the bat during the race. Some characters using these powers for crazy moves left and right. And our heroes begin to really get a handle on these abilities themselves, kicking ass in new ways. Alita 1 especially manages to utilize her abilities for the best. Not only getting the big money shot from the trailers, which is still sick as hell, but also a great one-on-one fight against Arachnid. You'll notice in this one shot, if you slow it down, while Alita tries kicking Arachnid in midair, she actually combines her legs and reveals one of her motorcycle wheels to strike that at Arachnid. You certainly can't see it on a first go, but by slowing the movie down you notice details like that which I think are so sick. But beyond the physical changes our characters go through as a result of this mid-movie shift, the more impactful changes come in how they act, how they react to this information. B-127 of any of the characters mostly stays the same. It is nice that for a comedic relief character, he does understand sometimes when things are serious and he doesn't make any jokes. But when the tone lightens up again, you get bits like his battle mask and knife hands, which allow him to fully, once and for all, earn the name Badassatron.
Badassatron.
Alita 1's arc is one I like a lot though, and it's certainly understated. I think you can make an argument that her change in behavior could have been shown more, that the movie could have spent a bit more time seeing her shift, but I think there's just enough to extrapolate from what the movie gives us. She starts as the tough-as-nails captain, someone who hates the other characters with a passion simply because they keep getting in her way. But there are brief moments where even she understands the weight of this quest and maybe even begins to buy in. But it's not until after the Sentinel reveal that she fully buys in, and especially begins to look at Orion Pax a lot differently. Where before he was the nuisance who also got himself and others into trouble, including her at the start of the movie, once the truth is revealed and she knows her world is a lie, I think she really begins to see the merit in this quest, and the merit of Orion Pax in general. Had there been more of a moment to see that shift, this would 100% be an even stronger arc. But I think by the time Alita decides to give a funny yet still effective pep talk, she sees Orion for the person he is and for the leader he could become.
This blind optimism that you have is why you make such bold and courageous choices that are also extremely stupid.
First time giving a pep talk?
But of course, the most significant changes come with our two leads, Orion Pax and D16, because still, the movie is entirely centered on them and their dynamic. But where Orion Pax jumps into the action upon learning the truth about Sentinel Prime, even going so far as to say he knew something was wrong from the start, D16's reaction is one of complete devastation. His entire worldview hinged on his love for the Primes, that by following the rules he'd be able to rise up the ranks and live the best life for himself that he could. But upon learning that not only has their work down in the mines been used to pay off a debt to the Quintessons, their greatest enemy, and not to provide that energon for the people of Cybertron, not to mention the fact that Sentinel killed Megatronus Prime directly, it destroys D. Despite how big of a deal the Sentinel twist really is and how much of a turning point it is for the story, the actual turning point comes with D16's reaction. He would much rather live his life in ignorance, never having learned any of this information. That way he'd be fine. Now he knows, and he'll never forget in a million years. So his anger is even taken out on Orion, the one who was reckless enough to uncover this information that D simply cannot move away from, which leads to the one line that informs the tone for the entire rest of the movie.
Fantastic! Another Orion Pax master plan! I can't wait to hear this!
Wait, don't you want to stop him?
No, I want to kill him!
I had had fun with this movie before this happened. There was a ton of stuff to enjoy, but this is where it fully locks in. This sends D16 on a path that he won't be able to walk away from. A path fueled by anger, resentment, and vengeance. I was sitting there in that theater thinking to myself, ooh, Megatron is back. Now, our two lead characters are on a diverging path. They both want the same thing, to stop Sentinel Prime, but in different ways. Orion thinks there's a way to rip Sentinel's throne from under him for the betterment of Cybertron. D thinks the only way to shut it down is to kill Sentinel then and there. And over the second half of the movie, you start to see these two characters grow into the characters they're about to become. They grow into becoming leaders. Two very different leaders at that. There are two scenes in particular that highlight the differences in approach for these two characters. For D16, it comes when they meet the Cybertronian High Guard, a group of soldiers hidden on the surface, featuring Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave.
Gosh, raise your hand if Wave is in your name. There's a lot of waves.
Silence!
D16 starts the scene noticeably smaller than everyone else. Even Starscream's got a full head of height on him, but D quickly shows off his power, using some of the new tricks he's picked up with his cog and beating the living scrap out of Starscream before revealing his fusion cannon. Now, D16 is bigger than everyone. He's in charge of the scene. It's all about one bot who's stronger than another, and he's the toughest one there. It's through anger and force, by putting himself above everyone else in that room, that he's able to take charge and rally the troops behind him. There's even a brief moment where his yellow eyes dip just a bit darker, becoming a more vengeful orange, which is a great little detail. By contrast, Orion Pax has a scene that is almost the complete opposite. He returns to the miners of Iacon, and the movie emphasizes just how much he now towers over them. He's like double their size. But in order to rally the miners together for the greater good, he kneels down. He gets to their level, meeting them where they're at, making himself smaller and less intimidating. Where D16 rose up to tower above the High Guard to put them in their place, Orion Pax gets down to eventually lift everyone up. Orion Pax becomes a genuine force of inspiration in this scene. And I gotta say, the way Chris Hemsworth's voice changes throughout this movie is great. I was one of many people who was skeptical about this casting choice. I wasn't sure if it would work at all. But what you see in this movie is a gradual shift from the young, rebellious miner who gets himself into trouble, cracking wise and making jokes all the time, to someone who matures a ton over the course of the movie. His voice grows more somber, but it also grows stronger as a result. This is where it's shown off. As he begins to rally the miners together, they all stand up with him. His voice echoes through the room as everyone is lifted to a more powerful state, chanting the name Orion Pax. After years of Transformers movies that have been getting this character wrong in so many ways, this moment was particularly big for me because I was just left thinking, oh, they got him right. That's Optimus Prime. Everything eventually leads to the final battle, the last stand to take down Sentinel Prime. Not before he does a bit of torture and welds Megatronus' face onto D16's chest, creating the symbol we all know. But this also comes with tragedy, because the diverging paths Orion and D16 are on are as much heading in different directions as they are colliding with each other. Because while Orion, Alita, and B are able to reveal the truth about Sentinel to Iacon, undoing years of work and finally removing him from his throne, D16 still isn't done. This only ends with a corpse. But to the shock of both Orion and the audience, the first corpse isn't Sentinel Prime. The core of this story has always been about the friendship of these two characters. They've always disagreed, they've always had their differences, but they were on the same team. Until now. Their paths have diverged, and it takes this moment for D16 to do the coldest thing he can, severing the whole thing on his quest for vengeance.
I'm done saving you.
What follows is the best scene of the movie. It's referred to as the fall in the soundtrack, which is relevant in two ways. Not only is it a literal fall, as Orion plummets below the city of Iacon, becoming grayed out as he plunges towards the core of the planet, but it's also about D16's metaphorical fall. The path he's on has led him here, and he's going to dive in no matter where he might land. And I love that they don't hold back visually. This might be a PG movie for kids, but it doesn't shy away from the one death the movie's chasing. It doesn't happen off screen, it's not a weak death by any means. D16 picks up Sentinel Prime, raises him into the air, and quite literally tears him in half. It's hardly the most violent death of all time. It's not even the most violent death in these movies. But it's great that in this moment, to show the depth of D16's fall to darkness, they just went for it, going about as far as you can probably go in a PG movie. And Brian Tyree Henry's performance in this scene is fantastic. Like Chris Hemsworth, his voice also changes as the movie goes along. Josh Cooley talked about it in a behind-the-scenes video that the reason for casting Brian Tyree Henry was because at the start he could sound like any normal guy. But by the time he got to the end, he could really let out that anger and rage. And that's never more clear than right here. He did start as your average working guy, but now he's a warlord, a tyrant. He is the villain he swore to destroy.
Follow me, and you will never again be deceived! Rise up!
Now, with the fall complete, our two main characters take on one last form. D16 takes on Sentinel Prime's cog, which was also revealed to be Megatronus Prime's cog, while Orion plummets to the core of Cybertron to be presented with the Matrix of Leadership. These two have forged their paths into the future, as they now become the iconic characters they were always destined to be.
I am Megatron! Arise!
Optimus Prime.
Now, allow me to preface the fact that I don't like cheering in movie theaters. That's not my thing at all. In fact, I'm a pretty staunch defender of movie theater etiquette. Turn off your damn phone. I even remember when everyone else was cheering around me for the arrival of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in No Way Home, I stayed silent. I was excited, surely, it was a lot of fun, but I didn't feel the need to make any noise. And while even during this movie I still didn't, I had enough control to stay silent, there was a moment where I got close. Because after being gifted the Matrix, Optimus is sent rocketing back up to the surface. Megatron is now laying waste to the city, destroying everything in his wake. Everything's taking a turn for the worse before finally Optimus smashes through the ground, sending this pulse wave across the area. I mean, it's almost like the whole area is reacting to this moment. You can even see the crowds backing away. The entire world is hit with the revelation. They're all witnessing the arrival of Optimus Prime. I could watch that moment all day, dude. It's so sick. What follows is the climax of everything the movie's built up. The very first fight between Optimus Prime and Megatron. These are the kind of fights you really live for in this franchise, and this one's no different. These are two near equally powered fighters, each getting a moment to gain the edge over their opponent. But what's even more fun is that they're still using the ability to transform as a superpower, even paying off some of the setups from earlier, some of the mistakes they were making that they can now use to best the other guy. Then you get crazy moments like Optimus tearing off Megatron's tank barrel before hitting him in the stomach with it, before Megatron reattaches it to himself, still in robot mode, and blasts Optimus back. I mean, how do you even come up with some of this stuff? But as evenly matched as the fight is, Optimus manages to gain the upper hand with the reveal of his Energon axe. It was one of the first weapons we ever saw him wield back in the second episode of the original cartoon, and now he's here to lay waste to Megatron and his lackeys, taking on Shockwave, Soundwave, and Starscream all at the same time. I mean, he can even use the axe to throw blast just like the Star Saber from Prime. He's just so cool. And ultimately, he defeats Megatron, banishing him and his High Guard to the surface, forcing them out of Iacon. But as one last jab at the heart, the movie flashes back for just one scene to show how Orion Pax and D16 first met. This is, I think, where some of the Pixar instincts come in, to nail down the central core of the story in perhaps the most heartbreaking way. These two were the best of friends when this movie started, and now they are forever destined to be mortal enemies.
This isn't over, Prime.
That is even a line that foreshadows where these characters might end up. This was the first battle between Optimus and Megatron said something similar during their last fight in the 1986 movie.
I would have waited an eternity for this. It's over, Prime.
But at the end of the day, victory is assured. Optimus is now the new Prime. He's got Elita 1 and B-127 as his trusted commanders, and with the return of the Matrix also comes the return of Energon to the entire planet. Not to mention, everyone gets T-Cogs. All of the miners are now able to transform as they were always meant to. Jazz even gets door wings just like his original toy. And they all join Optimus Prime to defend Cybertron and face off against the Quintessons should they ever return. They are now the Autobots, and he says it best.
I am Optimus Prime.
But of course, in the shadows, a new threat rises. Megatron isn't going to go down so easily. He's rallied the High Guard together, reforging them into an all-new army. He has now created the Decepticons. Some of these movies have done some exciting things and some interesting promises for the future. I mean, Rise of the Beasts had set up for Unicron and G.I. Joe, which could be fun if done well. But if we're going purely by how exciting a tease for the future is, there's nothing better than bringing it back down to basics. Unicron, G.I. Joe, whatever. The Decepticons, that's where it's at right there. Transformers 1 is awesome. From top to bottom, I think this is one hell of an experience. And while I can't speak for someone who might be going into this knowing nothing about the franchise, I can say that, at least anecdotally, even those who knew nothing still managed to have a good time, which is great. But as someone who is a fan, and after having tons of conversations with other people who are also incredibly well versed in this stuff, I mean, there's really nothing better. This movie is, in a lot of ways, a love letter to all of Transformers. A perfect celebration of 40 years of this franchise, with references and nods to virtually every aspect. While sure, this movie might have changed the currently established origins of Optimus and Megatron as being an archivist and gladiator respectively, there are hints towards that, at least on Optimus' side. He's still incredibly interested in history. His first scene is him breaking into the archives. The designs of the 13 Primes are new, updated versions of what we saw as the basis for the Aligned continuity as it got started in 2010. The idea of Megatronus' face becoming the Decepticon insignia comes from Revenge of the Fallen, with Megatronus becoming the Fallen, the father of the Decepticons. Not to mention the tons of other characters that make background appearances throughout the story. I mean, we got Jazz, Wheeljack, Ratchet, RC, Sideswipe, Ironhide, Moonracer, Sunstreaker, Firestar is right there, Brawn shows up, Windcharger is in here for 2 seconds. We got Thundercracker, Skywarp, and Slipstream among the High Guard too. I mean, and then you have Darkwing, who instantly became a fan favorite thanks to his hatred of miners. Don't forget all the names on the leaderboard during the race, from Hot Rod to Blur to Chromia, who ultimately wins the thing. Then there's a myriad of other repaints and remodels of various characters that you can honestly put any name to and have fun with. There are plenty of references and homages to the 1986 movie, like a reference to The Touch by Stan Bush.
I feel like I have enough power in me to drill down and touch Primus myself.
You don't have the touch or the power.
Orion Pax does the iconic pose that Optimus struck during that movie, in the latest in a line of references to that scene. Though as other people have pointed out before me, almost none of the recreations of that moment have gone beyond the pose itself. In the original scene, Optimus soars overhead and continues firing from above, and almost nothing has captured that part of the scene in their recreations except for maybe Revenge of the Fallen. The phrase "Rise Up" is lifted from Transformers Animated as the rallying cry for the Decepticons to contrast against Transform and Roll Out.
Decepticons, transform and rise up!
Much of the basis for the story is built off of not only the established canon from the Aligned continuity in the 2010s, but a fair amount of the IDW comics. Many of the plot details are lifted from the Autocracy miniseries. And if that wasn't enough, Sentinel Prime's sword in this movie is modeled directly after his sword in Dark of the Moon.
On Cybertron we were gods, and here they call us machines. Let the humans serve us, or perish.
There are tons of little Easter eggs and references for people to point out, but something interesting was brought up when I was talking to Chris McFeely about this movie. He discussed that some of these larger ideas within the movie, namely the Quintessons, feel like they're there not necessarily as true parts of the story, but as obligations to the central canon that Hasbro has established for Transformers.
There's a real deference to the brand monomyth that has come up in the last decade that it doesn't necessarily need. So why are the Quintessons in the film? Well, the Quintessons are in the film because the story of the film is based on a 15-year-old lore Bible, which was taking an idea from a 20-year-old comic to retcon a 30-year-old comic into a 35-year-old cartoon. That's the chain of events. Realistically, there's absolutely no need for the Quintessons to be in that film.
The ultimate point is that if this movie were written in a vacuum, or written without the potential constraints of trying to make sure the entire established canon that Hasbro has created was part of the movie in some way, some of these things would be different. If it were a more traditional adaptation in ways the first Michael Bay movie was, for example, some of this stuff wouldn't be in there.
And I think that if the deep-seated ideas behind the film have something to criticize about them, that's a big one. But I don't think it harms the film. That's the thing, is like, as much as I can sit here and unpack the film in that way, it doesn't harm my enjoyment of watching it.
It is still fun to point out the references and nods to the long-standing history of Transformers. But above all of that, I think what really makes the movie sing is that it is a fun, well-written, well-animated, and heartfelt movie with a bit of tragedy thrown in for good measure. I think that's what makes it sing to people who know nothing about this franchise. Because at its core, it's just about the falling out of these two best friends, and how they become bitter, war-torn rivals. Then, if you want to know more about where that could potentially lead, you've got plenty to choose from. You got the original G1 cartoon if you want something campier and fun. You have Transformers Prime if you want to go a tad bit darker. You have the movies if you're in for excessive violence and large-scale action, among other things. You even now have EARTHSPARK if you want to see the eventual future where Optimus and Megatron become allies again after the war's over. The vibes among the fanbase coming out of Transformers 1 is some of the best I've ever experienced being a Transformers fan. I mean, for just a straight month as people were seeing the movie, we were just talking about all the little details, all the moments, breaking down character arcs. For a few people that I know, they were growing a bit more distant from Transformers, but this movie managed to reignite that spark. This movie managed to remind them why they loved this stuff in the first place.
I was speechless. I was like, wow. Wow. What a film.
I loved it. It was great. That love has not diminished at all. I think it's fantastic.
I was very impressed. I was like, wow, that was an actually like great movie. Not a okay movie, not a good movie. It was actually great.
That first viewing, it was such a joy for me because just to see the world of Transformers kind of brought to life in this way. A more enriched version of Transformers was so special for me.
It's still one of the greatest films I've watched in a long time. In terms of animation, like when it comes to animated films, it was just brilliant. This is how great it can be, and I've made obviously videos on it, but I'm really proud of some of my best content is actually based on Transformers 1 because I'm just like that invested again.
Every time I watch it, I notice something new about it, or like I appreciate a new thing about it. Like the parallels between Optimus and Megatron's like origins, like how they get to that point, I think are very interesting. And I think how Optimus believes in preserving freedom and Megatron believes in enforcing order. Like you can totally see how they each got to that point, and I think it's very interesting and fun.
It's the latest adaptation of that story. I think it's the version of that story that probably does it the most justice. You know, so many other tellings of it have been in flashbacks, in cartoons, or in dodgily written novels and guidebooks that are taking their cue from a brand Bible first and trying to be a story second, you know? Whereas this one really tried to put something in it, you know? Yeah.
It reignited a passion and a love for Transformers in my life.
Critical reception was also stellar, with tons of positive reviews praising this as the best Transformers movie yet. And that's not necessarily a tough bar to clear, but it's nice to say it definitively and with no asterisk. And hopes were high for wherever you could take the story in a sequel. I mean, the further clashes of Optimus and Megatron, the return of the Quintessons, where could this story go? Personally, I felt there was a potential avenue to explore the story of Optimus and Alita and see where you could take those characters in a follow-up, maybe even doing something with them that has never quite been done before. Romance, perhaps?
Please, Alita.
But of course, for all of the hopes and all of the excitement for the future, it was all riding on if this movie would succeed at the box office. This movie had a budget of around $70 million, though reportedly the total costs were up to $147 million once marketing was taken into account. If they managed to surpass that number at the box office, talks would surely begin for the sequel. But as the opening weekend came to an end, we learned that the movie garnered a meager $24 million in its first 3 days. That wasn't gonna cut it. This, of course, sent the fan base into panic mode. I mean, the possibility of not getting a sequel to the best Transformers movie yet? Come on, dude. But hopefully, considering how positive the reception was, word of mouth would surely carry it across the finish line. People just gotta know this movie's out there and that it's good. So word was spread far and wide by people across the fandom. And at the center of it all, there was one fan that made it his mission to get as many people aware of this movie as he possibly could. TF Hype Guy, formerly known as the guy who was counting down to the release of the Rise of the Beast trailer, started a campaign on Twitter to promote this movie after its release. This campaign mostly consisted of replying to any and all tweets he could find with even the most tangential connection to the movie industry. Discussing Film might tweet out their negative review of Joker 2 saying, "Here's a movie that's bad," and boom, Hype Guy is in the replies saying, "You know a movie that's good?"
The first one that blew up was the one on the Joker 2 discussing film post where they were saying this movie is terrible. And I replied and I was like, don't waste your money, go see this instead. And that post got a lot of traction. So I was like, okay, I'll do it again. And then that got a lot of traction. And then I was like, okay, I'll do it again. And that kind of just kept happening. And I just kept doing it over and over and over and over and over. And I just kept going and I kept posting and I kept going in replies and I kept doing other things. And people kept screenshotting my replies and reposting that. And then that would get thousands of likes and millions of views. It was really amazing to see for the film that this many people were interacting with the film, telling me they're going to go see the film. In fact, my inbox has never recovered from that week. It was really, really amazing to see this many people go see the film.
This was happening all across the website, in many different circles. It might have started in movie-related circles, with Hype Guy replies on posts about Joker 2 or Megalopolis or The Wild Robot, but soon enough it expanded even further than that. It really didn't matter what the original tweet could be, you'd still somehow see Hype Guy in the replies. LeBron James could tweet something, and there's Hype Guy. Joe Biden could tweet something, and oh, there's Hype Guy promoting Transformers 1. It was one fan's quest to spread the word, to make sure people were aware of the movie and hopefully convince them to go out and see it. Even managing to spread the word with various YouTubers, who wound up making reviews about it in the following weeks to help spread awareness. Now, you could make plenty of arguments as to how this strategy could be ineffective in the long run. Maybe it could be irritating or annoying or counterproductive to the ultimate aim of the campaign. But what I found interesting in talking to him about this is that Hype Guy knew that it was never going to move the needle that much, if at all. But part of the thrill of it was to see how many people were responding to it and going out to see it as a result. The needle didn't move much, but it moved just a hair in the right direction.
In the grand scheme of things, I was a drop in that money bucket. The numbers, they actually did skew slightly higher than predicted. I was like, you know what? I felt like I did something. And that was enough for me. It wasn't a lot, but that made me feel pretty happy that I was able to contribute to something I love so much in such a significant way to me.
Not to mention it got some recognition from some of the people who worked on the movie, including the production designer Jason Schreier, and even the movie's director Josh Cooley, who paid tribute to Hype Guy as this campaign wound down. However, of course, the box office totals still came in short of expectations. The movie managed to rake in $59 million domestically and $129 million worldwide. In the most simple of terms, it flopped. Beetlejuice took the wind out of its sails, The Wild Robot took the wind out of its sails. It was really just a bad time for Transformers in general. Of course, many people have theorized as to exactly why the movie flopped. What could have happened to achieve such a record low turnout for a Transformers movie? Because outside of the '86 movie, this is the lowest grossing one of the bunch. Again. Of course, many people pointed out the first trailer, listing it as the main cause for why people didn't see the movie, but I think that's really just an easy target. I can't say it had no impact, but I don't think it's that simple. It's an easy boogeyman to chase, and I think there are many other theories behind this movie's box office that are way more interesting.
You could easily say the marketing, but then I also think it's the competition the film faced at the time. Maybe the incoherent release schedule of the film, because at time it was released in UK, for example, you could already, unfortunately, pirate the movie as a clear HD version on anywhere.
They had so many fan screenings of this movie, inviting fans from all over, from all these different entertainment outlets. I mean, I think they let thousands of fans from so many countries watch this movie in early screenings to get positive buzz amongst the Transformers fan base, but they put no real energy from that point into making it appeal to casual fans, because I think they saw that the core fan base was so off-put by the first trailer.
It took a while for me to come to this, but it kind of just had to be accepted that there is a very strong possibility that animation is just not a viable way for Transformers to go in the cinemas. At the end of the day, you don't make 130 million on just bad marketing. It has to have just a general lack of interest from audiences. And I kind of accepted that that might be the case genuinely, that people are not too terribly excited for animated Transformers films.
I have some extremely close and dear friends of mine who we all studied film in college, and they won't watch animated movies. You know, they're like film savants, and they're like, well, animated movies are for kids, and I'm not a kid. And I'm like, you suck. You're so stupid. I love you, but man, come on.
It got very good word of mouth. Like, I know loads of people that saw it that aren't even fans just because they heard, you know, all the good stuff about it. I just think it was the marketing, really. And I think just people just, like, general audiences just having an aversion to, you know, animated movies.
It didn't aim for just mainstream people, just like people that aren't fans of Transformers. The first Michael Bay movie, anybody can watch it because it's so fresh, it's such a spectacle. You don't have to know Transformers to like that movie or to want to watch it because it's so cool, you know?
I agree with pretty much everything everyone else has said. Too much competition, not enough marketing for the casual fans, and maybe people aren't keen to see an animated movie in this franchise that's mostly been about the big robot apocalyptic brawls. But the one theory I want to add, which is a harder pill to swallow, did Age of Extinction ruin everything? Think about it. The first 3 Michael Bay movies were not critical darlings, far from it, with Revenge of the Fallen of course being reviled upon its release. But after Dark of the Moon was better, many people were still on board. But Age of Extinction came out in 2014 and was arguably the worst of the bunch. It was the punching bag of Hollywood that year. I mean, you couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing someone say how bad it was. It was the talk of the town, especially in more mainstream circles, about so many of the insane moments. I mean, the Bud Light scene, the Romeo and Juliet scene, the fact the Dinobots were barely in it, the pandering to China at the end. It managed to make $1 billion worldwide, which is how the conversation got to be so big, but it also took a significant dip in North America compared to Dark of the Moon. What this movie really did was cement the reputation of this franchise, the reputation being bad. These movies sucked. They were crass, hateful, nihilistic, overly long, and there was no sign that they were going to get better. Which is why by the time The Last Night came out, it made way less money, making $400 million less than the fourth one. And for those who did see it, it was the worst one of the bunch, without even the insanity to make it interesting. Audiences had gotten wise to the Michael Bay Transformers shtick and were ready to leave it behind. But even with Bay himself not in the director's chair, I think the reputation survived, which is why Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast were not immediate returns to form. Rise of the Beast especially is crazy because after its first trailer became one of the top 10 most viewed trailers of all time, sitting in the ranks with Infinity War and Endgame and Spider-Man No Way Home, it ultimately didn't even crack the top 10 box office of 2023. Like, it got beat out by Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. How does that happen? And now that we have our first out-and-out good Transformers movie with no asterisk, it still didn't turn things around. Now, this makes it sound like the reputation of the franchise is irreparable, but I do think it's a factor. Many people will think of the Transformers movies and think of how bad they were. So when parents are presented with that, or a different movie like The Wild Robot, they're gonna go see The Wild Robot. As a result, the future of Transformers on the big screen was thrown into question, with the major move being that Hasbro would stop funding movies based on their properties, with studios like Paramount having to front the bill if they wanted to make more. Which of course has put the eventual G.I. Joe crossover into a weird spot, because after it was teased at the end of Rise of the Beast, we've heard practically nothing. There's a writer attached, but no director, so who knows if we'll even get that. And in an even more devastating turn for fans, it was confirmed that there are currently no plans in motion for a Transformers 2. So the hope of seeing the direct follow-up with these characters, with these actors, is unlikely. It's unfortunate because it does feel like it was only just getting started. We had this fantastic setup for a new, fresh Transformers universe that we will likely never see again. But there is a silver lining here. We got Transformers 1 out of all of this. We finally got a Transformers movie that's easy to put on at any time, introduced to anyone, and that captures what this franchise can do. We might not get more, but we did get this. Now, while the future of Transformers on the big screen was called into question, its presence on the page was doing incredibly well. Because just after the release of Transformers 1, the third major arc of Skybound's Transformers comic continued with issues 13 through 18, picking up where we left off to carry our story into the future. And things begin to explode into a full-scale civil war between the two different Decepticon factions, because Starscream makes his grand return after getting booted by Soundwave. Only now, his entire bottom half has been replaced with a Cobra Hiss tank. But that doesn't deter him much. He's got Astrotrain on his side and the Combaticons. And they launch attacks against Soundwave and the Constructicons, making for these big action set pieces where the Combaticons combine into Bruticus to take down Devastator. They even completely destroy Seattle in the process, so really taking no prisoners with this entire comic run. It's crazy. But what this also does is it gives us an enormous amount of backstory and context to who Starscream is in this story. Because during issue number 13, we see his past. We learn that his name was once Ulchtar, which is actually the initial name proposed for the character in the 80s before Bob Budiansky decided to name him Starscream. And he was once an honorable, honest young Transformer on Cybertron, with friends in Jetfire and Genvo, until Jetfire left to explore the stars and Genvo was killed as the war on Cybertron began, leaving Megatron to be able to twist Ulchtar's soul to his own devices, as he eventually became the Starscream we all know. This really brings out a side of Starscream we rarely, if ever, see, and it's an interesting aspect to the character that changes your perception of him within this story. But what this also does is it provides a really interesting twist on Megatron's original alternate mode, because like in the 80s cartoon and toy line, Megatron once again transforms into a gun. Many people have made fun of this for the simple fact that why would the Decepticon leader shrink into a weapon to be used by other characters, let alone Starscream? But this twists that to reveal that Megatron actually maintains the control, and he can bend whoever's holding him to his will. The implication is that his weaponry in his alternate mode is even more powerful, which is why he does this at all. So what you get to see is him bending Starscream to commit these acts that maybe he wouldn't have otherwise. Megatron's evil knows no bounds in this story, making him a truly intimidating figure. And it also helps give context and explanation as to why Optimus is slowly losing his own way. Megatron's arm is beginning to corrupt him, making him do more things that he otherwise wouldn't. But of course, Megatron is still trapped, right? He's still out of the picture, right? Well, maybe not. During an Energon Universe crossover issue, we got a glimpse of where Megatron's been this whole time. During the battle on the Ark as it was careening towards the Earth, Optimus cut off his arms, Starscream left him for dead, and he crashed on the planet separate from the others, only to be found by Cobra, who began to do experiments on him. But Megatron, through his sheer strength of will, managed to break himself free, vowing to enact revenge on Starscream once the time came. Though not without getting significantly damaged. He's of course still missing one of his arms, but Cobra's forces managed to blind him as well. That is until the present day, because the ever-loyal Soundwave has sent Laserbeak to find their old master. And after he does, Megatron hooks himself up to Laserbeak and uses him as his own eyes, creating another instantly iconic image. Like Optimus wielding Megatron's arm, this image of a damaged and blinded Megatron using Laserbeak to see is a really unique and powerful image. And it even goes to show that despite being immensely damaged, despite being blinded with one arm missing, Megatron is still as intimidating as ever, as at the end of issue number 18 he makes his grand return, striking fear into everyone, including Optimus Prime. But it's not like there's no hope at all, because back on Cybertron, some of the Autobots still fighting the good fight at home have found a way to use some leftover spark fragments to create an all-new Transformer. An all-new Autobot known as Shredhead, a character invented for this run of comics to help turn the tide back home. So some evil from the past has returned, but some good of the present has also been created to help turn the tide. There's lots to enjoy with Skybound's Transformers run, and things are clearly building into a major climax.
Skybound is Dreamwave for the 2020s, in that it's a really seismic return of Transformers comics through a headline-grabbing launch tactic and big-name, award-winning creators on it, and then telling stories using like characters in forms that people recognize, you know?
But while the comic was rushing across the fan base to critical acclaim, those still interested in the franchise's future on the screen had something to look forward to, as Transformers was heading back to television. EARTHSPARK was back for a brand new batch of episodes. Now, there had been a lot of rumors over the summer after the first batch of Season 2 dropped that the show would not continue into a Season 3. Which of course would break the pattern that had been established for years that most Transformers shows only get 3 seasons before getting kicked to the curb for the next show to take its place. But this time, the second season would have a second batch of episodes, and that would be it. We're done and out in 2 seasons. Although, to add more confusion to EARTHSPARK's already confusing release strategy, this second batch of Season 2 episodes would be dubbed Season 3. So I guess the show would get a Season 3? Technically, even though it wasn't produced like that. Either way, EARTHSPARK was back with 8 new episodes for its third and I guess presumably final season. 8 episodes that could only be viewed on Paramount Plus because still, to this day, they haven't aired on Nickelodeon. So, sucks to suck for them, I guess. But the clock had now turned to October 25th, 2024. So pop open Paramount Plus and have a seat because it's time to return to the adventures of the Terrans. Don't let the rapper fool you on this one. They might call this Season 3, it might technically be Season 3, but really this was 100% designed as Season 2, Batch 2. It picks up right where we left off, it continues the larger threads to their seeming conclusion, it really is just the second half of the story that they set up before. Characters like Isabel or Izzy, who were introduced last batch, get expanded roles this time, with her in particular dating Robbie throughout the season. Meanwhile, there's a new episode with Fair Maestro, putting the Terrans into a sadistic escape room. And it all kind of centers around the still unconscious Terratronus. The unfortunate thing about continuing from where Season 2 left off, however, is that this still isn't all that great. The animation and writing quality is still at the same level as it was in Season 2, which is to say it's mostly pretty rough, with stilted motion, weird lines of dialogue, and some strange story choices mixed in for good measure. Like Izzy apparently being a Quintesson shapeshifter in disguise? Yeah, turns out Robbie's love interest was an alien the whole time. It really just pulls the rug out from under that entire storyline, which doesn't leave me emotionally affected as much as it leaves me confused and less than pleased. Like, oh, I was following that story, but I guess it's over now. So, there are some additions to the show this time, one of the major ones being Prowl, an Autobot who specializes in capturing Decepticons across the galaxy. He starts off as a bit of a dick here, which can be a bit off-putting, and he ultimately has to go through an arc where he learns to trust Megatron and accepts that the two of them are now on the same team. The Hate Plague makes a comeback after having appeared in both G1 and Beast Machines. It is, of course, a plague that spreads by touch and corrupts Transformers to become the angriest, most vengeful versions of themselves, which of course leads to some unintentionally funny moments.
Alita 1?
Oh look, a Terran! You're the cause of everything that's gone wrong since the end of the war.
Hey, that hurts my feelings.
Look, I understand that this is a show for kids, but that doesn't adequately represent how hurtful those words can actually be, which makes this whole exchange pretty funny. It's like if the exchange was, I'm going to call you racial slurs. No, that makes me feel bad.
I was watching it in disbelief. Like season 2 is pretty bad. I think season 3 is like a little better, but like not much better. It's not even like a big moment, but it's just that moment was like the point of no return for me, where I was like, I don't think this is ever gonna get good ever again.
But this does lead to a climactic duel between Optimus Prime and Megatron. They might be allies now, but even the Hate Plague can turn them against each other. Unfortunately, this is probably the single worst fight they've ever had. I mean, it's so clunky and slow, with nothing really clever going on at any point. This is the moment where I had to look back at the fight in Season 1 and remember how good we had it. But the side effect of that is that this just makes me feel sad. Like we were really onto something when this show started, and now we've drifted so incredibly far away. But hey, Schloeder's back and he's talking again, so we got that going for us. Eventually, the two-part finale features the return of many aspects from across the show. The Quintessons make an appearance, becoming the main villains, with Sharkticons in tow. The Chaos Terrans make a miraculous return, as does Terratronus, finally awakening from her slumber. And it takes everyone, Autobots, Megatron, Terrans, Chaos Terrans, and Terratronus, to face down against the Quintessons and defeat them once and for all. This is bigger than anything the show's done before, and it leads to some pretty cool looking moments, certainly cooler than anything since Season 1. And then at the end, it's all just over. The Quintessons are stopped, our heroes are victorious, there's a slight epilogue, but for the most part it just wraps up right away, and then the show's over. It kinda left me a little underwhelmed. It wasn't a big, wow, what an ending. It was more like a beleaguered, alright, I guess that's done now. Though, confusingly, there's supposed to be more of this show at some point, allegedly. Hints have seemed to suggest that there's more EARTHSPARK on the way, presumably in the form of Season 4. Maybe it's a new batch of episodes, maybe it's going to be more like Cyberverse Season 4, where it's 2 big 45-minute episodes to close everything out, but admittedly there was one major thread left hanging, since during this season the Decepticons got their hands on a ship and immediately left Earth, presumably to reunite with Cybertron. But even with that dangling, given how rough Seasons 2 and 3 were, I for one am not really chomping at the bit for more. The machine had already started rolling onto the next Transformers show after this, and given the pattern of 3 seasons and we're out that this franchise has pulled time and time again, it feels like it's time to hang up EARTHSPARK's cape. Some people didn't even get as far as I did when watching this show. Many were completely turned off after Season 2 and decided it wasn't worth it to continue on from there.
Season 2 was a really big disappointment, a shocking disappointment, and I didn't even watch the 3rd season as it came out, to be honest. I just kind of checked out.
EARTHSPARK was a show with a lot of promise and got off to a great start, sparking people's love of this franchise from new and old fans alike. It introduced a bunch of new ideas that may one day become mainstays in the franchise. But unfortunately, after Season 1, it loses what made it interesting or special. And by the end, I was left thinking, I'm ready for something else. So while the comics were doing great, 2 other major threads in the franchise were in a weird spot. The future on the big screen has been thrown into question, and now the future on TV is heading into a hiatus. Either before more EARTHSPARK arrives, or before another show takes its place. That's 2 major areas of the franchise left barren for at least a while. But hey, at least we still have the video game. Transformers Reactivate, right? How's that been going? It had been 2 years at this point since Transformers Reactivate was announced, and since that happened, we have heard nothing. Well, alright, that's not exactly true. After Reactivate didn't make an appearance at the 2023 Game Awards, the team did release this message saying they were excited to share more with us in 2024. Okay, fantastic. Just gotta hold out a little bit longer. Maybe we'll get some more stuff. It's December 2024 already, but we'll get something for sure, right? Except they didn't make an appearance at this year's Game Awards either. But that's alright. We're fine. Totally. There's still time. We can still get an announcement around the Christmas season. Transformers Reactivate is going to get a new trailer before 2024 is over. You can count on it. Oh. It's 2025 now. Okay, so we didn't get anything in 2024, but surely that can't be a bad sign, can it? Just a little bit longer. Trust me. We'll get something. We'll get... Oh, never mind. On January 8th, 2025, Splash Damage officially announced that Transformers Reactivate was cancelled. Apparently, development behind the scenes never quite worked out, and despite announcing things over 2 years before, the game never got to a place where it was functional to the level it needed to be. So that leaves Reactivate as a piece of mostly lost media, with sparse gameplay footage getting out of old builds, a couple toys maybe still populating shelves if they haven't vanished already. But the real surprise was that this wasn't all that surprising. I think after months of waiting and no news or announcements to speak of regarding the game, it started to become an inside joke that this might never come out. The writing was on the wall for a while that maybe Transformers Reactivate was gonna get deactivated.
There was always a part of me that had the doubt of it because there was just so much backpedaling, no communication. After a while, you're either thinking two things. Either they need more time or they are screwed. I don't like to have a negative headspace. I like to be always positive, trying my best to be, because, you know, it's just healthy for your mind. Like, I'd love to be proven wrong. So yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised, but I was kind of like, I was still gutted. I was still upset. I was like, wow, they actually pulled the plug. And...
Like, it's not fun being a Transformers fan sometimes. Like, we don't get a lot of wins. But I wasn't surprised, actually. Like, when it happened, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. They didn't announce anything. No news, not even, like, gameplay. And even, like, some of the leaks I saw, I wasn't that impressed by. I was disappointed and not surprised, for sure.
So now, it's been 10 years and still counting since we had a full-fledged Transformers game that could ignite the fanbase. And with the previous ones unavailable for purchase, it kinda leaves us with nothing in the video game space. Because I'm sure the other games, which mostly look like cheap mobile top-down shooters, aren't gonna capture the hearts and minds of fans everywhere. So the movies are in a weird spot, the shows are on hiatus, and the games are just straight up not happening. What do we even have going on right now? Well, we have fan projects. No matter what fan base you go into, there's always a bevy of fan-made projects. Be it fan art, fan films, fan animation, it's an inevitability. Some might have more than others, but it's always there. And Transformers is no different. There are a legion of fan-led ideas that have echoed throughout the history of this franchise since the beginning. I can't understate just how creative some people in this fan base are, combining ideas, drafting artwork based on the litany of characters at their disposal, creating animations, the whole 9 yards. There's also a bad side. Like any fan base, there's a side of fan projects that comes through that isn't very good. The most notable recent example for us was Transformers Prime Galvatron's Revenge. This was designed to be the true sequel to Transformers Prime that we never got. Forget Robots in Disguise 2015, this is where the story of Prime went after Predacons Rising. And after nearly a decade of development, it released late last year, hot on the heels of its own controversy. One of the lead voice actors is comically racist, so... As a result, about half of the animation volunteers left the project, and it came out rather unceremoniously last December. The results were not that great. It had no real story sense, the action scenes were way too long, the movie tried building up the return of both Optimus Prime and Megatron, but never quite figured out how to make those moments hit on the level they needed to. The return of Optimus Prime should be a moment that brings the house down, and yet in the final movie, he just kinda shows up again and he's part of the final battle. Not to mention, the project is kind of weird towards one of the only female characters in the entire thing.
What a shame. Such wonderful curves wasted on an Autobot.
Whoa. This weirdly united the fandom for a little bit, because there's nothing better to thrive off of than negativity. But while Galvatron's Revenge is certainly an example of fan-made movies gone bad, with it being our own homegrown Spider-Man Lotus or Superman Solar, there are a bunch of other examples of fan-led projects that are so much better and worth a lot more attention. Johnny Flash has been one of the most notable creators making videos with the Cybertron games, dating back to the release of Fall of Cybertron in 2012. He's made the rounds with tons of in-game skits and comedy videos, putting these characters into various scenarios that they otherwise would never find themselves in.
I've done a lot of these machinima skits using the Fall of Cybertron game. So we modded it so that we have complete camera control and can get any camera angle we want.
But of course, there's always room to explore different genres. Comedy may be fun, but what if he decided to tackle something a bit different?
And then this one project, I was like, oh, let's do a Halloween video. Let's make a horror film, you know? And then what's the scariest thing we could do? Oh, let's do Nemesis Prime, dude. This would be so cool. So I kind of wanted to troll people, you know? Just like make them think it's a really funny video. And then at the halfway point, just go like whiplash. Just whiplash the audience and just go a complete 180, just dead serious. And everyone just dies, you know? And I wanted to just like creep the audience out.
This video of Nemesis Prime was a fan favorite on Johnny's channel, and garnered its own series featuring 3 follow-up videos in the following year. But of course, things were hindered in a rather significant way in 2020 when the online servers for Fall of Cybertron shut down. These were of course essential to capturing some of these scenes with multiple characters, so without them, how could they even make videos? It took many years, but Johnny explored additional animation avenues, starting to learn to use tools like Blender to capture some of these scenes in hopefully new ways. And earlier this year, after a bit of a hiatus, he announced his grand return with his biggest project, a follow-up on his fan-favorite series, Nemesis Prime vs. Megatron. This came not with the finished project, but instead a call to arms. A call to fundraise the project and help Johnny Flash cover the cost to get it made.
The reception to the fundraising video was just so positive. People were just so excited. People were saying like, oh my gosh, Johnny Flash is back, and like he's back with the milk, and like so many funny comments like that, you know. It was very, very encouraging.
The goal was simple. Cover the cost of creating Nemesis Prime vs. Megatron by raising $7,000, with subsequent goals after that to help fund future projects should they get that far.
It was a very surreal experience because I thought we were just gonna get maybe 7,000, maybe in 1 month. Like I didn't think we were actually gonna reach the goal. It was doing relatively alright, and it seemed like we were on track. We hit 7,000 in a month. All of a sudden, I got this $1,000 donation, and I was just like, what? What the heck? And the next thing you know, it's like piling on 2,000 and like 3,000. I'm just like, what the heck? What's going on? It was very, very surreal. I was just like, what the heck? Next thing you know, we hit the $10,000 goal.
Ultimately, once all was said and done, they managed to raise over $18,000, more than enough to fund this project, and even some money to fund what comes in the future. And a huge percentage of that, $10,000, was all donated by just one person. And through some unpredictable circumstances, Johnny was able to reach out and thank them for their contributions.
I can't fathom why you would do that for someone, you know? And then the person just was like, oh, it's simple, really. I was going through a rough time in my life, and your videos really uplifted me and gave me a lot of comfort and helped me through those hard times a lot. Now I just want to return the favor to you and help you like achieve your passion and your dream, you know?
Now, Nemesis Prime vs. Megatron has hit YouTube to stellar reception, and Johnny is on his way to continue making these fan projects with the money they've managed to raise. On a completely different side of the spectrum, you have Paper Plane, who's mostly been doing review-style videos about various Transformers topics for quite a few years now. But now he's stretching his wings to create Transformers Pizza Bots, a new animated series in a new style never seen in this franchise before.
It started out with the artist Jito. It was kind of his baby. And then very early on, he brought me in, and then we just kind of brainstormed a bunch of stuff, and now it's like both of our baby. I guess I'm like the stepdad. Pizza Bots has its own like style and flair, and we're just trying to do something completely different. And we're not trying to fall into like, you know, typical Transformers territory. Like, I've been really hesitant to like show any footage of it because there are so many like incredible shots, and like just the ingenuity on display. It's amazing. It's so like cute and fun and stylish. It's just crazy.
I think one of the most notable voices in the fan-led space, however, is Kian Carlisle, who has made it something of a life mission to uncover the lost secrets of the 4th season of Transformers Animated. Famously, that show got cancelled after its 3rd season, but hints and glimpses have been seen over the years for what they planned for Season 4. But it's not just Season 4 that he's interested in. For the last couple of years, he's also been discovering and reanimating deleted scenes from across the show's run. There were a number of scenes that were originally lost, but he's been working on restoring them and showing them off during yearly TFCon LA panels.
Years ago, in like 2021, my friend Alex and I had wanted to animate this page of deleted scenes in the EARTHSPARK Almanac. In the complete EARTHSPARK Almanac, there's just pages of deleted scenes, and these had always captured my imagination, especially as a kid. And then it came 2023 TFCon. I think I had the idea, what if we did it as a panel? So we basically decided to just animate every deleted scene that is in those 4 pages of the EARTHSPARK Almanac and try to visualize them to the best of our ability, because we have been animating in the Transformers animated style since we were in high school.
If you thought that wasn't cool enough, it has also broken beyond just the fan-led space, as he's managed to get the involvement of several of the show's voice actors, including David Kaye, who voiced Optimus, Grimlock, and Lugnut, Corey Burton, who voiced Ratchet, Shockwave, and Megatron, Bumper Robinson, who voiced Bumblebee and Blitzwing, and Jeff Bennett, who voiced Prowl.
Panels, conventions have this air of legitimacy to them that I didn't realize. Like, I've been doing the exact same things on YouTube for years. I'd never been able to get in touch with anyone, but all of a sudden I did them during a panel, the exact same things, and now all of the voice actors are like, oh, this is cool, there were so many people in attendance, and all of them have said yes to doing it. That snowballed for the 2nd year, where I got in touch with relevant parties who provided me with all of the scripts from the show and all of the storyboards from the show, and that gave us a massive wealth of scenes no one knew existed before that we can additionally animate.
But beyond that, he's also managed to enlist the help of Marty Eisenberg, who was the lead writer on Transformers Animated during its run.
I also realized there was an opportunity here to have Marty Eisenberg as a captive audience and show him that I'm capable of making cool things. So I invited him to be a part of that panel, because I kind of knew him, and I'd interviewed him a few years prior, and he said sure, he'd love to be a part of it.
But it's not just the deleted scenes that have kept Kian busy. At TFCon LA just this year, he revealed a new comic called The Toy Maker and the Bots, which was a tribute to the late Derek J. Wyatt, the lead artist and character designer for the show who passed away in 2021. It's a very emotional comic, with tons of heart and tons of laughs. It's a really successful way to celebrate his life and his impact on Transformers as a whole. And now, Kian is hard at work with Marty Eisenberg to help finally restore some of the lost ideas behind Transformers Animated's 4th season, as they are busy right now creating a story set in the far-flung future where Bumblebee has become a Prime.
There was going to be a flash-forward time travel episode called Bumble Prime, where Bumblebee sees this dystopian alternate future where there's a zombie Predacon virus ravaging Cybertron, and his future self is a leader called Bumble Prime. And I got the opportunity to write that with Marty Eisenberg as story editor. This was basically him settling into the role of story editor for the world of Animated for the first time since the original show's run. I wrote the outline, he gave notes, I wrote the first draft, he gave notes, then I wrote the second draft, and then he took it from there and he did like a handful of edits to give the final product. It was very collaborative, back and forth, zigzagging of ideas. Marty's said he has kind of an emotional desire to return to the world of Animated, and I've had that desire the entire time I've been on the planet, basically.
And then you can head over and look at TF Nation, the UK's very own Transformers convention, which has made it something of an annual tradition to uncover lost aspects of this franchise's history. From doing a script reading for the first episode of Animated Season 4, to revealing the first draft of the 1986 movie from before it became what it is today, and just this year, Chris McFeely and Jim Sorensen revealed the scrapped alternate version of the original G1 cartoon, what could have been Season 1 of the 80s show airing on network television, a comprehensive video of which you can find on Chris McFeely's channel, breaking it all down. This is the kind of stuff that I think is the most inspiring about this fan base and about this franchise. You see people going out there, creating cool stuff, even getting to work with some of the people behind the original shows that we all enjoy. When large aspects of the rest of the franchise are in flux or in the unknown regions, you can always trust the fanbase to keep things afloat with cool stuff any day of the week. But it's not like the official side of Transformers is fully out of the game, as we still have toys. After the Legacy toy line came to an end in 2024 with Legacy United, Hasbro introduced the next line called Age of the Primes, which is doing a lot of the same things as the previous line. You know, bringing back popular characters from across the history of the franchise and combining them in one place. But this time we also have the central focus of the original 13 Primes. For the very first time, these 13 characters are set to get their very own toys. They've been these figures of the franchise's deep lore ever since the days of Revenge of the Fallen, and even earlier with the Dreamwave comic run in the early 2000s. They've been a mainstay in the background, as practically every iteration of this franchise in the last 15 years has included the Primes to some capacity. But now, you'd be able to get them in your hands and assemble the entire team for the first time. So far, they've released Megatronus Prime, Solus Prime, Prima, Alchemist Prime, Star Optimus Prime, Alpha Trion, Onyx Prime, and Micronus Prime, with a couple more still to come. For anyone out there who likes the concept of the original 13 Primes, this is definitely the line for you, with some cool designs and accessories to boot. But if you're someone more interested in the stories than you are in the toys, have no fear, because SKYBOUND's Transformers comic is still underway, with its second year continuing with issues 19 through 24, which would of course bring Daniel Warren Johnson's run with Transformers to an end. It was only ever going to be a 2-year stint, concluding the stories he had been building up, ending this first major run of SKYBOUND's Transformers series. And these last 6 issues really begin to put the pieces in place for the grand finale. On one hand, Shredhead is sent back to Earth to join the festivities down below, much to the chagrin of Elita 1 on Cybertron. Meanwhile, Ultra Magnus, who has been tortured and maimed by Shockwave for years, manages to escape a similar fate from the humans, and as a result is able to rediscover a bit of his own spark to rejoin the fight. The aerial bots are now part of the proceedings, of course combining into Superion to turn the tide against Devastator and Bruticus. But the real kicker comes with Megatron, because now that he's back, he wastes no time. He bests Astrotrain in a fight and then proceeds to fully repair Starscream, only to make it more satisfying when he beats him back into a pulp. And then of course, since his alternate form takes control of whoever's holding him, he forces Starscream to destroy Astrotrain in one fell swoop. Dark stuff all around. But we also get a bit of backstory and explanation to this particular power Megatron has over others, because we get to see that at one point in the past he was captured by the Quintessons and thrown into an endless loop of trials by fire, where he was bested time and time again, all designed to show how small he truly is. But what it really did was prove Megatron's mettle, prove his resolve. He is the strongest there is in many ways. There's really no one else like him. So he was given this ability by the Quintessons to bend others to his will via this new alternate form. But that power, of course, also extends to the arm wielded by Optimus Prime. The Autobots finally discovered that this arm is a poison. It is corrupting Optimus from within, and the Autobots are forced to blast it off, finally severing Megatron's arm from Optimus once and for all. But of course, that only means that Megatron is able to get his arm back. Couple that with the restoration of his eyes, and for the first time in this series, he is back in tip-top shape. That cannot be good. And of course, it all leads into the biggest battle the comic has ever seen. As Optimus undergoes repairs, getting a new partial arm from Wheeljack, Ultra Magnus takes command and leads the charge against the Decepticons. All in the midst of the city of Chicago, which of course has been a center point in Transformers before, with major appearances in 3 of the live-action movies. But while the larger war is cool, everything leads to the showdown we're all waiting for. The battle between Optimus Prime and Megatron. And since this all takes place in issue number 24 of the comic, I am going to give a brief spoiler warning only because of how recent this is. So, spoilers for the next 2 minutes, alright? Okay, here we go. What I find interesting about this class isn't just the fact that we see these two robots tearing each other to bits almost immediately, it's that Megatron knows exactly how to push Optimus's buttons. He's not just a physical force, he knows how to ruin Optimus mentally. He forces Optimus to choose between saving his friend Beachcomber or the human characters Spike and Carly, who've been mainstays throughout the series. If Optimus refuses to choose, Megatron will kill them both. Way to play right into the exact weaknesses Optimus has always had, getting right at his core in potentially the most devastating way. And you might wonder, how is Optimus ever going to get out of this? Well, help arrives at just the right time, because Shredhead jumps into the fray, finally arriving on Earth to deal a blow that knocks Megatron right on his ass. And it's through their help that Optimus is able to deal the final blows to claim victory. The whole event moves at lightning speed, but also it's incredibly satisfying. Megatron is left almost completely speechless as his surefire path to victory is torn away from him. And the cherry on top? Optimus deals the last hit, echoing some of his words from the 1986 movie.
You, who are without mercy, now plead for it? I thought you were made of sterner stuff.
Which hits incredibly hard considering just how merciless Megatron has been in this series. Now Optimus gets to throw it in his face as the Decepticons are forced to retreat. On top of some other surprises that I won't reveal here, issue 24 brings this run of Transformers to a startling and effective close. While damage has been done across the Autobot forces and the city of Chicago, there's a small light at the end of the tunnel, a light within the Matrix to guide our heroes into the future.
Skybound has just been on such a, hit after hit. Almost kind of not a perfect run, but so close to perfection. There's not been a single moment in that series that I've thought, this didn't work. It's always like, man, this really just getting me every time.
There's a lot to love with Skybound's Transformers series, from the darkness of the story to the depth it's given some of the characters, but there have been some who've thought there's room for improvement, room to spend a bit more time with these characters and flesh them out a bit further. And perhaps that opportunity could come in a TV show.
I think this show, if adapted into a television show, could work very well, because you can span out the comic a little longer, give each character some more depth, and then combine that with the hype moments, and my god, this could be a masterpiece in television form, I feel, with a little bit longer of a runtime for the comic to really develop its characters.
Of course, Hype Guy said this to me mere days before it was rumored that there might actually be a TV show based on Skybound's comics. Not just Transformers either, it'd bring other aspects of the Energon universe like G.I. Joe to the screen as well. Now, we don't know much about this, we don't even know if it's real just yet, but it could be a very interesting avenue to explore this story and expand its reach to more audiences down the line.
With the rumors that they might be adapting the Skybound comics into a TV series, I think it's going to be challenging. I don't think they're going to hit it from note to note because there's a lot of graphic stuff in that comic. It'd have to be a streaming show. There's no way they can air that on television, without a doubt.
But beyond that, the future of Skybound without Daniel Warren Johnson has already been confirmed, with Robert Kirkman, the mastermind of this whole Energon universe, taking over from here alongside artist Dan Mora. They're going to kick off the next phase of the story with issue 25, taking things into the immediate future. The main story isn't even all Skybound has to offer with Transformers, as they've also had the graphic novel series Worst Bot Ever, featuring an all-new character named Ballpoint, who of course turns into a ballpoint pen, in case you wanted something a bit lighter. At the same time, we now have an all-new show called Transformers Cyberworld. This is certainly not the biggest Transformers show we've gotten, with 5-minute episodes releasing exclusively on YouTube for free, but it is our latest foray onto the small screen on a platform that many people use every day. So the future of Transformers on TV is starting to take focus. How's the future on the big screen? Well, after months of pure silence on the movie front, outside of the confirmation that there was no plan for a Transformers 2, Paramount finally decided to drop a bombshell right at the end of June. They revealed that they were in the midst of developing 5 different Transformers movies, and only one was the previously announced G.I. Joe crossover that would follow up from Rise of the Beasts. Two of these projects were given no description, but the other two came with startling reveals. It appears that Josh Cooley has signed on for a live-action Transformers movie. Clearly they have some amount of faith in him after Transformers 1, and are maybe hoping the prospect of a live-action movie will help convince people to go back to theaters. But the fifth idea, the one that is by far the most insane of the bunch, is that apparently Michael Bay is coming back for another movie. After all these years believing that whatever Transformers movie he was working on was gonna be the last, it appears even the one titled The Last Night wouldn't be his last outing. Now, we don't know much of anything about this project, and it hasn't been confirmed if he will direct, but I don't know if it's such a good idea. I know some people are no doubt excited, and I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but the extended run of Michael Bay's movies is what got us into this situation in the first place. People got tired of that shtick. And I, for one, believe that if Transformers has a hope of becoming the juggernaut it once was under his stewardship, bringing him back is actually not going to do that to the same extent. I think Transformers needs a rather drastic reinvention on the big screen, not unlike what the TV shows have been doing for decades. That way it has a real chance of appealing to a new generation of fans instead of capitalizing on the people who liked it last time. Really, my only solace is that I don't think Michael Bay is that nostalgic of a filmmaker that he'll suddenly bring back everyone from the first few movies for a legacy sequel type deal, because Transformers becoming nostalgia slop would be one of my worst nightmares. Now, it's worth noting that while 5 movies are apparently in development, the likelihood of us getting all 5 is slim to none. I think the best bet is we're going to get one of these movies, probably the Michael Bay one if he signs on to direct. Mostly these are in motion for Paramount to keep their hands on the rights to Transformers, which will lapse after 5 years if they don't do anything with it. So they have until 2029 to get a movie out to theaters to keep holding on. And following the massive shakeup of Paramount getting folded into Skydance very recently, they have announced that Transformers movies have become a priority going forward. So it's definitely more than we had before. We can definitely say that there is a roadmap once again for the franchise's future on the big screen. One can only hope that it'll turn out to be, well, good. When talking about this franchise, sometimes I come back to the dissonance of how it started. You know, other franchises that have been around for a long time have something of an artistically motivated origin. Star Wars started as a movie George Lucas wanted to make. Marvel started as characters these writers wanted to create. The MCU started with the idea of putting these characters onto the big screen in ways they hadn't been seen before, letting them cross over into these major event movies. Halo started as something Bungie thought would be really cool and that people would have a lot of fun playing. By contrast, Transformers started as a result of deregulation. Toy companies could suddenly advertise to kids way more than they could before. Transformers is a toy. It's a product. In the original show, the original comic run, the 1986 movie, they're all commercials made to sell said toys. But something that's interesting is that despite having a decidedly cynical origin story compared to other contemporary franchises, Transformers managed to still find the art somewhere along the way. Either through the creatives working on the shows and comics over the years, or the fan base who really managed to take something away from it. And as a result, Transformers has managed to withstand the test of time. We're now sitting at 41 years and counting since this whole adventure kicked off. We've gone through a number of iterations, a number of different transformations across its run, from the boxy G1 look to the beasts of the 90s to the dense and detailed live-action movies, and everything that's come out in between. After all of this, I really only have one question, perhaps the most important question. What makes Transformers special?
I think what made it stand out is just the energy of the characters and the performances of those original voice actors. I think that there's hundreds of distinct characters, and they may not be groundbreaking or original characters, but they are fun characters.
It's passed on from generation to generation. It sticks around. And there's many franchises that do, of course. It's not unique to Transformers, but the fact that Transformers is allowed to reinvent itself, that it's allowed to try new things. We're going to keep reinventing the wheel for our franchise so that more and more people can come on board, that more people can join it.
It's able to be so many things and it can appeal to everybody. And I think Optimus Prime Like, I've always appreciated him as like a character and what he stands for and what he represents. I think I saw Superman recently and I was like, I need this Optimus Prime in my life, you know? I need this guy. I need him to be Optimus Prime.
Maybe that's the real punk rock.
Optimus Prime is a special character. Bumblebee is a special character. All of these characters are so special because they all have their different, unique personality quirks that everyone can find enjoyment in. Everyone can find a character and love them. There's something for everyone in Transformers.
Someone like Optimus Prime, you can only change so much, but when you think about it, he's had so many different designs. Then it's those characters that do change. You've got Bumblebee looking like this, with no voice. Next minute, he's talking again. It's constantly evolving. There's characters that are completely different in one continuity compared to the other. It's that it's always refreshing in some way.
Also, it's just spectacle too. Like, I don't think there's anything quite like Transformers. Like, they turn into vehicles. The way they do it is just so mesmerizing. Any kid, no, not even a kid, anybody that sees that is going to be like, yeah, that's cool.
Transformers is just, it's like nothing else. And I do think that its real strength and the thing that makes it unique has to be its adaptability. I think back to 2008, 2009, when we had animated, the movies, and universe all on shelves at the same time. Those were three things, probably like at no greater point in time in the brand's history, were such a different visual design language between them, and yet they were all Transformers, and it didn't feel odd that they were all Transformers.
I like it when it's deep and it's, hopeful, but I also like it when it's just unabashedly robots punching each other.
Transformers has the potential to be anything. It seems, from what they turn into to the visual language of the shows, films, and comics.
That has kept Transformers alive, is just being willing to reinvent itself. So as goofy as it sounds, transformation is what makes Transformers special.
When you boil it all down, the thing that makes Transformers special to me is what is at its very core. There are a million different things that Transformers can be and what it can do, but there's always been one consistent thing at its center that I've been able to latch onto. Optimus and Megatron. It doesn't matter if it's a Cybertron-based story or an Earth-based story. It doesn't matter if they're Autobots and Decepticons or Maximals and Predacons. The conflict of Optimus and Megatron is at the core of what Transformers is. This ideological clash, these two people with different ideas of how to run things or how to fix things. Or maybe it's even just as simple as Optimus needs to stop Megatron because he's super evil and wants to destroy the universe. And they can be explored in a number of different ways. You can have a version like Transformers Animated where they know nothing about each other, and it takes Optimus's heroic acts through the show to finally gain at least some of Megatron's respect.
You're a persistent little Autobot. My name is Optimus Prime!
Or you can go the route of the aligned continuity and many stories that have come since where Optimus and Megatron were former friends turned bitter rivals. Something Transformers 1 of course explored unlike anything else. And that creates a dynamic where the two know each other intimately, innately. They understand each other so incredibly well despite being on opposite sides of this conflict, which even creates a sense of respect they have for one another.
Optimus is not so easily destroyed. We have millennia worth of battles behind us to prove it.
But by the same token, that kind of conflict isn't necessarily unique to Transformers. The idea of friends turned enemies is a story that's been chronicled before. The idea of rivals who know each other innately has been chronicled before. But nothing else has been able to personify that conflict with two big robots that can slam into each other and make a giant mess. Nowhere else are you going to see that same level of carnage. And you can rest assured that every time these two characters do battle, it's one for the history books. Be it their first battle, their last, or any number of them in between. It's an event unlike anything else.
One shall stand, one shall fall. Why throw away your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron. No! I'll crush you with my bare hands!
But speaking more generally, it's honestly a little hard to put my finger on what it is about this franchise that makes it feel like nothing else. But I think the answer kind of came out during some of my experiences this year. Across 2025, I went to 2 Transformers conventions. I went to TFCon in Los Angeles, and I went to TF Nation in Birmingham. That's right, I went to the United Kingdom for the first time. I even saw a bunch of other stuff around the UK and France briefly. I went to Stonehenge, actually, which was great. It even holds some special significance to Transformers since it was a center point to the last night. I got to see where Sir Edmund Burton died, so that's cool. But to be at those conventions, to be in those rooms, be at the panel room where voice actors and writers talk about their impact and feeling about Transformers, or to be in the dealer rooms where you have stacks upon stacks of Transformers toys from across the entire 40-year history, all of that really nailed down the central idea of what makes Transformers special to me. It's a slightly abstract concept, but to put it in the most sentimental way possible, there's just no place like home.
I like it. It's cool.
And that brings us right up to the present day. The year is 2025 and we have something of a roadmap for the future. Now I would like to give one hell of a thank you to everyone who chose to participate in this video, for talking to me about Transformers, for getting some of their words out there in this video. This was a total blast. Chris McFeely, Paper Plane, Commandant Cam, Delta Tryon, Johnny Flash, Kian Carlisle, TF Hype Guy, a huge thank you to all of you for taking part in this. I've linked all of their YouTube channels and Hype Guy's Twitter page in the description if you want to check any of these guys out and see what they're up to on their own. And I'd like to thank all of you for once again rejoining me on this journey with the Transformers. And unlike that other Part 5 I did a couple years ago, this one will most certainly get a follow-up. In a couple more years, I'll be back with Part 6. There's also the possibility, though this isn't a promise of any kind, that I might cover aspects of this franchise that I maybe didn't get to in any of these 5 videos. From each distinct era of the comics to the Japanese exclusive shows, there's a lot more to this franchise that I've never covered that I could tackle sometime in the future. Now that's not a promise, that's not a guarantee, it's just me thinking out loud, basically. I know how dangerous that is, but I'm doing it anyway. But before any of that can happen, I'm set to head off into a whole new universe for my next project. Because after teasing it for quite some time, I think it's finally time I fulfilled my destiny. And my destiny too. Until then, however, this will be the end of this video, and of course...
The Transformers will return after these messages.